Hello and welcome back to A Sprinkle of Disney. You're tuning into our 17th episode. If you're new, then a very magical welcome to you. And if you're back, thank you for returning and listening to another episode of ours. I'm so glad you've enjoyed us and decided to come back. And since our last episode, we actually shared a very exciting announcement over on our Instagram account. So we now have merch, which we're both so excited about because it has our logo on it and it has our like catchphrase, like slogan on it. We've come up with some really cool designs. There's lots of different colors and we have all kinds of apparel items from t-shirts to hoodies. We also have tote bags, stickers and mugs. So if you want to find out more about that, then head over to our bio on Instagram. There's a link and you can go straight there, have a browse. Maybe purchase. It's up to you, you know. You never know.
Buy a gift for a friend, you know.
Yeah, gift, you know. Maybe you need that mug for your early morning coffee.
Maybe. Think about how satisfying it would be to drink your morning coffee out of the mug while you listen to our voices.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. That's so true. So yes, feel free to head over and have a browse. So today's episode is going to be a really good one.
If we do say so ourselves.
Yeah, I know, like, not to brag.
We haven't actually done it yet, but it's going to be so good. So we're really excited about today's episode. We've been waiting a good few weeks to talk about this because we were going to talk about it a few weeks ago and then we thought, no, we'll wait till it's complete. So today is all about Marvel's latest Disney Plus series, WandaVision. Its first ever TV, official canon TV series on Disney Plus. So we were going to talk about it a few weeks ago and then we thought, no, let's wait till we have all 9 episodes and we can do a thorough discussion.
Yeah.
So that's why today we're going to be discussing all 9 episodes. There are 9 in the series. We'll be splitting the episodes into 3 sections and we'll be chatting about our favourite moments and characters from each set of episodes as well. Big announcement, blaring horns and sirens. If you haven't seen WandaVision and you want to remain completely neutral and unaware, this is not the episode for you right now. No. we will definitely be containing spoilers. It's not the kind of show we can do without spoilers.
You literally cannot talk about this show without a spoiler.
No.
I don't think it's possible.
This would be the end of the episode. It would be 3 minutes and that's it.
Yeah, so thanks for listening.
Thanks, that's the end. So if you haven't seen it yet, have a nice rest of your day. See you again in like 3 weeks. So please come back and listen to this after you have finished watching the series. If you don't mind spoilers and you're actually listening to find out more about the show, stay tuned, that's absolutely fine. But we don't want to be responsible for ruining anyone's knowledge of the show. Because I would hate if that happened to me with the Twilight books and I'm still not over it.
Oh, spoilers are the worst. They actually are the worst.
So sad. It's the fact that someone gave me one spoiler for the Twilight books and then I was like, I didn't know that. They went, oh, but you knew about this, so, and I was like, no, I didn't.
No,
spoiled
I hate that. Book. No, not acceptable.
So we're not going to be spoiler. I don't think of a cool word, but basically we're not going to give you any spoilers.
We're not those people, is what we're trying to say.
Exactly. But if you have seen it, hopefully you will enjoy. Yeah. And I think by now most fans of Marvel have seen it.
Yes.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
So without further ado, we'll get started with our very first fun fact of the episode.
Yes, so fun fact number 1. So as the show worked through different time periods, there was a dialect coach on set to ensure every era was using the correct dialect. Love that.
That's so cool.
The details. It's all about the details of Marvel. There's so many things, like in every episode. Go home in on the small details.
And as we'll talk about more, like as we talk about the episodes, most episodes kind of jump between a different time era, so they'll jump between like 50s, 60s, and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's why that was there, because they were trying to make sure that everyone was kind of echoing their characters correctly. That must have been so hard to jump between those time periods and the way that you act and everything. It must have been so difficult.
Definitely. And as we'll discuss shortly, the costumes also reflected the eras as well, which was amazing.
So that brings us on to our first segment. So we're going to just be talking about the background of the show first. So if you haven't watched and are just here for the bands, here for the spoilers, this will give you some context. If you have seen it, hopefully you'll learn something that you didn't know before. So WandaVision was the very first Marvel TV series to be released on Disney Plus, and it actually kicks off phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It stars Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch / WandaVision, Wanda Maximoff. And Paul Bettany, who plays Vision, is also back as well.
Yeah.
Is he though? Who knows? But the actor is back. So
yes.
That's
He's very much real.
He is, yeah. So the film takes place directly kind of after the Avengers Endgame film. We'll talk a bit more about that later, and in terms of the time frame and stuff like that. So it's worth noting actually that it premiered on January the 15th of this year, 2021, and it has 9 episodes. So it only finished last week on March the 5th. But it wasn't supposed to. I think it was pushed back a little bit, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Due to COVID.
Because of COVID, and it wasn't supposed to be the first film of first section of Phase 4. I think because obviously Black Widow was supposed to be out by now as well, wasn't it? So as if by magic, pardon the pun, WandaVision became the beginning of Marvel Phase 4, which is very cool.
Yeah.
And I think by this point we've been waiting a year for any new Marvel content. So the anticipation was massive for this, I think.
Definitely.
And I think it suddenly became a lot bigger than we expected it to be because it wasn't the second or third project. It was the first one in a year. So anticipations were high.
Mm-hmm.
So I will give you a plot summary. One of my iconic plot summaries. It's very difficult for this one.
Mm-hmm.
So the plot summary, I'm going to try and be useful. So the question, do I go chronological? Do I go episodes? Basically, when the show opens, we're all a bit confused because it's like black and white. Wanda and Vision are kind of like living in this like suburban town. They're married. Now, if anyone casts their mind back a year ago to when we had Endgame, Vision's supposed to be dead. So it's quite confusing when you watch this. We're not really sure what's going on, what's happening. This takes place, is it about 3 months afterwards or 3 weeks after Endgame?
Yeah, it's very soon. Like...
Yeah. Oh, I'm reading it here. Yeah, so it's set 3 weeks after the events of Avengers Endgame, and that Vision and Wanda are living in this place called Westview in New Jersey, and they're trying to like conceal their powers and they're trying to fit into like normal life. And then as we kind of go through the episodes, things seem to like change. Like Wanda still has the powers but doesn't show anybody, and we move between TV decades. So initially the show is set up as a sitcom.
Yeah. With
like the canned laughter, audience laughter, etc. As we move throughout the shows, that develops. So we go from 50s to 60s to 70s and so forth. When we're talking a bit later, but the first 2 episodes are also in black and white to reflect the time period. And as we move through, we start to see that maybe, just maybe, things are a bit more complicated than we first thought. It looks like Wanda is potentially in control of this place. We found out that Wanda has actually made this town the way it is. She's kind of trapped all these people inside, and everything is protected by something called the Hex, which is like a massive big red like shield that's protecting the specific area. No one in the town remembers that they're actually not who they think they are. Everyone has different personalities, and like there's no children either, which is worth noting as well. Particularly no children for most of these episodes. What we discover as we move through the episodes is that Wanda has kind of created this place in her imagination and then kind of brought it to life with her powers. Nothing, like none of her family in this is real. None of the homes really are real. She's kind of changing everything based on her grief because she's missing Vision, basically. So the whole show is about how you deal with grief and the way it can kind of take you through the different phases of grief. And through that, we also learn of like a villain who's a little bit closer to home than we thought. And we also learn about Wanda's future, really, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And by the end, she actually becomes a Scarlet Witch, because whilst we all knew she was a Scarlet Witch, before this point, no one's ever actually said it.
Yeah.
And we all knew it was coming, but no one actually knew. And the MCU, no one knew that was her. If some of these terms are confusing you and you're like, what's the MCU? What's phases? Head back to, I think it was episode 8, which was Marvel. Marvel for dummies, if you like. Basically, Marvel for me before I started watching the film.
It was episode 9. Episode 9,
oh,
everyone.
Episode 9. Apologies. So my language is confusing. You might want to go back and do like our crash course in the MCU first.
Yeah,
so
it
that's
is a lot.
Basically it. It's really hard to explain the plot of this show because it kind of works non-chronologically. We get a lot of kind of answers and hints. We get a lot of flashbacks. We have some great characters right the way throughout. We have some returning characters, and then we also have some new faces as well. So There you go. Plot summary.
That was good.
Basically,
I think you included everything you need to.
It's difficult. But basically, the whole 9 episodes are Wanda trying to deal with the fact that her boyfriend's dead.
Yeah.
To summarise.
But that makes it sound very simple and basic. There's a lot more to be seen.
It's far more complicated than that. But
underneath,
at the core,
the bare bones.
If you had to give it in one sentence, that's what you get. Wanda misses Vision. Yeah. Full stop. Hence the term WandaVision. So this is my own fun fact. So I didn't realise that it was.
I forgot about this.
So all the promo and the ads for this, if you haven't seen it already, it was great. Like, no one really knew what the show was going to be about. We'll talk about that in a second. But the title, we knew, WandaVision. And it all came with televisions and, like, sitcom-style stuff. So in my head, I read it as just, like, WandaVision. It then hit me in, like, the first episode that it's Wanda's name and Vision's name. So even though I was right, it was a play on words of both their names. So I was a bit stupid and forgot that Vision also had his name in the title.
It's also really hard, like, word or title to say. Like, WandaVision. Like, I feel like...
It sounds like One Division.
Yeah, exactly. Or
WandaVision.
Yeah, it's so hard, but it's okay. I'll allow it. It's fine.
Thank you. I grew. I did grow, and I realised that it was. I was just really going really meta, you know, really analytical. Oh, what does the title mean?
It was actually more simple than what you thought.
Unlike the plot.
Yes.
But you know.
Yes. Exactly.
So that's the plot. We'll get more into that later with each episode, because this is the kind of show where you have to go in kind of episode by episode for it to really make sense. Which you'll know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it yet, you're probably very confused, and that's fair.
Yeah.
So, Rosie's going to tell us a little bit about some of the critic reviews, because this has been received pretty interestingly, I think, hasn't it? There's been a really broad scope of person watching this and receiving it. So, Rosie, tell us more.
Yes, no, you're right. There have been some people that have been kind of completely in love with it, like we have. And then there's been other people that have been like, what is this show? It's a joke. So, we've got complete ends of the spectrum here to cover. But starting with our scores, obviously scores on the doors. So we've got on IMDb, we've got 8.2 out of 10.
Ooh.
Which I think is quite low, but also it kind of makes sense because it is a very different and unique show. So people's kind of approach to it, I think, isn't going to be kind of really like black and white, you know? Like, I think it's going to always be a bit more complicated.
It's also I also feel like it's always hard to rate a full TV series because like a film is very different, but a TV series, like, you're looking at like hours and hours worth of content.
Exactly.
To try and rate all of that is really hard.
Yeah, exactly. And like little things can knock it down. So you kind of have to like adjust your score after every episode as well, I feel like. You start off with one score and then by the end you're like, actually, no.
That's so true. And different episodes have different scores as well because people prefer different episodes and stuff.
Yes.
So yeah.
And that brings me to my next point actually. So on IMDb, the top scoring episodes, both got 9.1 out of 10. And that was episode 8 and episode 5.
Oh, well, that makes so much
sense. We'll obviously go into what those episodes kind of entailed in a bit, but just interesting to bear in mind which ones were the most popular. If I had to guess 2
episodes, it would have been those two. Either those 2 or number 4 as well.
Yeah. Yes, 8's definitely my favourite. So I agree with these. Yeah, same. And then Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it 91%, which is high.
Yeah.
The audience, however, this is where it's interesting. They gave it 81%. So what we kind of have, you'll kind of notice from the scores, is that the critics are a bit more like taken with it, and the audience are a bit more divided. Like they're not on the same page, which makes sense. And actually, like, there's always a bit of this with Marvel anyway, because there's some people that are just anti-Marvel, like off the bat, and they can't get behind something. And there's some people that were going into this probably expecting it to be like completely, you know, Marvel, like what we've seen before.
Yeah.
And obviously it was different, so that they would have had complaints about that. So it kind of makes sense. And obviously critics are looking for like specific things to get their scores as well. So yes. True. Then on Metacritic, they gave it a 77 out of 100. So that's lower than the others, but still high. Like, I don't think any of these are particularly low.
No, well, you compare it to some of the other ones that we've talked about in the past.
Yes.
Not that I'm still bitter, but I think that they are relatively high.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. So yeah, scores are pretty high. And also, it's worth mentioning actually that the director, Matt Schuckman, he received a Directors Guild of America Award nomination for the series in the category Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Movies of Television and Limited Series. What a mouthful!
I know.
Imagine announcing that.
Or having it printed on an award
Oh.
just to have really tiny
print. People will be like in your house like, what's that for? Let me just pick it up and actually see what you've achieved.
You'd have to like install a microflying glass.
Yeah, literally.
Not microflying. You don't want it smaller. Magnifying glass onto your award.
Yeah, so, and they've also, I don't know how legit these awards are, but I thought I'd mention them. So there's something called the Scream Awards, which is basically for like fantasy TV and like films and stuff. And they've been nominated, WandaVision has been nominated for the best TV show and the ultimate Scream, which I'm guessing just means like the best.
The best.
So it's the same again. So well done. But it's interesting that they've it's already been like nominated for awards and stuff.
Everyone's kind of anticipating the Emmys, aren't they?
Yeah.
That it will get some sort of recognition.
It'll be interesting.
I think it's got to.
I think so, and I think it'll be interesting to look at this like a year on and see where we're at with the accolades, like to see maybe if there would be like more awards by then.
That's very true, and I think because when you look at films, like Marvel films in particular, tend to get overlooked because you don't have a best superhero category.
Yeah.
You have like a best animation category, so Disney films tend to fall into that.
Yeah.
But I know there's been a lot of criticism in the past about the fact that superhero films, they have so much visual effects, they have like the characters, the stories, the plot, everything about them. The costume is insane.
Yeah.
But they're never taken seriously enough to actually fit into a category.
Yeah.
I feel like with TV, you've got more room for that because TV tends to be a bit more accommodating.
Yeah, it's a bit more flexible.
So hopefully it will get more recognition.
I hope so. I think it has to with the amount of kind of attention it's got from the world. So fingers crossed.
Well, it's the world's biggest TV series, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So, I mean, really, it has to. I'll be disappointed if it doesn't. So then moving on to the reviews. So as I said before, it was quite interesting because you've got some people who absolutely loved it, and then you've got some people who basically, I think they didn't watch past the first 2 episodes and decided already that they were done with it, which you should never do.
Move.
Especially with Marvel. You should trust in Marvel. Have they ever let you down? I mean, they might have done.
Because the whole premise, like the whole point in the first 2 episodes we'll talk about in a sec, is for you to question what's supposed to understand what's going on.
That's the point. It's the intrigue. Anyway, so let's start with a positive review. Like, let's start off on a nice tone. So, an audience reviewer from IMDb said, Marvel really gave a character room to breathe. I agree. Those caught up in spoilers and fan theories really missed out on the point of this show, which is to explore the depth of Wanda's character and of the grief that she, like so many Marvel Cinematic Universe characters, are processing. I agree.
I think I've seen that online actually, and the fact that it's not, because people kind of expected it to be this massive like you said before, like classic Marvel, where every episode was going to be fights and massive stunts and everything else. But the whole point, and that's why it's been so different, is that it's been more emotional, it's been more story based.
Yeah.
It's focused on the writing more so than previous ones have, which has been a nice change of pace.
It is. It's nice, and I think you just have to go into these things with an open mind, because if you categorize them automatically, then it will lead to disappointment. It always will. Like, if you have expectations going in, you're going to be disappointed.
Plus, Marvel haven't really had much choice, because you've got to think Captain America's gone.
Yeah.
Iron Man's gone. Black Widow's gone.
Yeah.
So lots of your core staff, core cast are gone.
Yeah.
And they're the people that we've been attached to since the beginning, and they had to have their own introduction story. So now we have to do that for the next generation of Avengers. They have to have their chance to do that.
Exactly, because otherwise you don't get attached to the characters in the same way that we did.
You don't care.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that review. So then another one said, as we were actually just kind of hinting at, the acting from Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, and Catherine Hahn is award-winning. They're award-winning performances. The show in itself is just amazing. After each episode, you theorize about what you've just watched. I've never felt more excited every week, and I can't wait to binge it one more time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the exact same. I can't wait to watch it all at once.
Yeah. And it's like that kind of hints at the whole like every week we would be so excited to watch it. Like that would literally be my week. Like every day I'd be like, we're one day closer to WandaVision, like we're nearly at Friday. And then we just called it WandaVision Day in the end. It wasn't Friday anymore because that's what we look forward to. So
how sad that we're recording on a Thursday. Tomorrow's going to be our first WandaVision.
I know. Day. I was just about to say that. However, the making of WandaVision comes out tomorrow on Disney Plus.
True.
So
True.
I think I'll be watching that to see. But yes, you're right. It is sad. It's sad that we don't have it anymore.
It would hit Thursday, and I'd be like,
I know.
Tomorrow's WandaVision Day.
I know. Oh, but yeah, I completely agree. Like with that review. And then the next one, someone said on IMDb, they said, watching this show every Friday has been a true treat, a form of escapism from everyday reality, much like Wanda is escaping reality herself. The show, therefore, in many respects, is reflecting life back at us in a strange way. And I think we can all appreciate the multi-layered magnificence that is this show. I agree.
It's very layered.
Yes, it is. It is. And I think, especially the form of escapism thing as well, like for us at the moment, like we are kind of loving any kind of way to like escape from what's going on with the pandemic and stuff. So it's so nice to have a fresh, unique series to like dive into every Friday and something to keep you going as well. Because that's the thing at the moment, we've not kind of got like plans and stuff. So
and something, so like something to like mark the day or mark the week is suddenly a lot, which is probably why it's also been a lot more popular.
Yes,
because people are inside and have to watch it.
Exactly. Yes, and then the next one. So another. Oh no, actually, this review is from Slate. It's someone called Erin Quayle, and they've said, even though Wanda can do extraordinary things, she still struggles with the nebulous and thorny concepts of grief and sorrow. And in the COVID era, in which living with constant trauma has become a painful reality for almost everyone on Earth, Wanda, a costumed superhero married to an android with unlimited power to shape reality to her will, has quickly become one of the most relatable characters on television.
Ooh.
Interesting.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how people home in on Wanda in these reviews. Obviously I know it's about her, but it's just interesting. It's very testament to how good Elizabeth Olsen was, I think.
She was so good.
So then moving on to more negative reviews.
Oh no.
Okay, so the first one, someone basically just said, there's quite a long review, but I'll just summarize because they kind of summarized it. They say, in the end, it's not bad, it's not good, it's vanilla. Soon I will forget this show ever existed.
No. How?
They also said that the epic battle felt small, boring, and weightless as well, just to add to there.
Oh, you know why? It was two women. It wasn't enough.
That'll be why.
2 women. Because 2 women being powerful is really boring. So that's why.
So
we should have done. We should have took out 1 woman and added in 5 men. Maybe they would have been satisfied.
Maybe then that would have been more interesting to them.
Maybe. I
don't know. Okay, then another one. This is from Rotten Tomatoes. Someone said, the nods to old sitcoms were creative and neat, but overstayed their welcome. The middle section was very good, engaging and entertaining. The last third stumbled a bit. The effects work was hit and miss. It was nice getting some backstory on Wanda finally, though I thought it was a little inconsistent.
Explain yourself. Inconsistent how?
Exactly. I mean, she also added that it wasn't compelling. But, this was the best bit. They said, I mostly enjoyed myself. Sorry?
Mostly?
Who says that? Like, I mostly enjoyed it.
If I didn't enjoy what I was watching, I'd turn it off.
Yeah, why would you carry on watching it? Like, also, you either enjoy something or you don't. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. There's no mostly.
You can, like, question parts of what you're watching. But, it's not like a meal where you're like, oh, I enjoyed the meat but not the sprouts. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not how TV series work.
It's so weird. Such a weird thing to say. And then lastly, another Rotten Tomatoes reviewer said, WandaVision is by all accounts a chance for 2 of the MCU's more sidelined and misunderstood characters to flourish on their own terms. More often than not, they do, but the show lacks a larger overarching hook. Moreover, its episodic shifts in tone and style don't often fit the show's darker themes.
See, this is a problem I have, right? People came in with their own expectations of what a Marvel film should be.
Yeah.
And it's not a Marvel film, it's a Marvel series.
And there's no formula.
No, there isn't, and that's the whole point, is that every Marvel project is individual. Doctor Strange is completely different to Iron Man. They're all so different, and that's the beauty of them, is that they magically somehow all work together.
Yeah.
And to come in and say that, like, this doesn't work with dark themes, if we just sat and watched, like, Wanda crying for 9 episodes, no one wanted to watch that.
No. And equally, no one would want to watch the fight scene every single episode.
No. Then it wouldn't. That was the whole point. Everyone was so excited to get to the 9th episode.
Exactly.
To see this showdown. I think some people are just too harsh on it, just because it wasn't 100% their thing.
Yeah.
Or 100% what they wanted. They're like, no, like, you know, it doesn't match my expectations, rather than looking at it for what it actually is.
I feel like people set it up to fail in their heads, because they decided off the bat what they thought it was going to be, and then when it didn't match up with that, they were disappointed. And it's like, you don't get to do that though. Like, this show was made in the way they wanted to make it. Like, they're not going to listen to your, like, theories now. It's already been made. So just deal with it.
Especially when you come after Endgame, and the fact that Endgame was so battle focused, and Infinity War.
Exactly.
It's all very power, aggression, like, let's fix things and everything, and it's very action based. After that, I think we needed something, because that's what I love about this, and I'll talk about this a bit later when we talk about episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
I love that this deals with the fallout. We never see superheroes dealing with the fallout.
No.
They've got something else to do, or someone else to save.
Yeah.
We never really see them vulnerable and on their own. They're normally in a group as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a whole brand new situation. Wanda literally has nobody around her. We never see a superhero like that.
No.
So it's a whole brand new formula, like you said. So how can you have expectations for that? You just can't.
No.
And like they're saying there that it doesn't kind of fit the darker themes. That's the whole point, if I'm correct, because the whole point is that it's meant to be about dealing with grief.
Yeah.
And that, you know, at times grief isn't all let's stick our head in the sand and ignore everything.
No.
There are moments where people do feel happy when grief, and then they feel guilty. So there's so many different elements to it that you can't just say this doesn't represent dark themes, because it does. It just represents them in a more realistic and true way.
Exactly, which I think is what people want as well. And I think, you know, everyone deals with things differently, and I think that's what this show was trying to represent. Like, again, there isn't a formula for how someone deals with losing someone. No. So these people just need to chill out.
Because if they said, because one of my main critiques, and I'll come on to it later, is the fact that, like, the episode lengths were too short for me. I feel like there was more they could have, like, built in. By the time they built things up, it was like it was finished.
Yeah.
But so if someone had come in and said that in a review, I'd be like, that's fair. I agree with that. But I don't agree with any of their negative reviews, unfortunately. I think you have to look at it from, like, take a step back and look at it and think, right, objectively, how do I feel?
Yeah.
And
No. So, alas, there are going to be some people you can't please.
Apparently so. Well, that's fine. That's fine.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Fab, that brings on to Disney Fun Fact number 2. So, in the 50s episode 1, there are hints to Bewitched, which features the classic nose wiggle from the TV show Bewitched, where they scrunch their nose and wiggle their nose to make magic. Elizabeth Olsen couldn't wiggle her nose. She can scrunch her face up, which we see quite a few times.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
She can't wiggle her nose. So she replaced it with waving her hand instead for magic to happen, which is quite cool. I just have this image of her, like, trying so hard to wiggle her nose.
But it's funny though, because you're right, she can scrunch her face so well. In fact, that's something people pick up on all the time. They're like, she looks so cute when she scrunches her face. So it's so funny that she couldn't wiggle her nose.
I wonder if I can do it.
I don't think no.
If you can see this now, it's not a great picture.
This is the content you're here for.
I move my mouth instead.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. When you're trying to move your nose, you actually end up moving something else in your face.
We'll practice and we'll get back to next episode.
Basically, it's quite difficult, so it's not a surprise that she couldn't do it. I wonder if anyone really can. So that brings us on to segment 2. So in this segment, we're going to be discussing episodes 1 to 3. So the first 3 episodes are, so we're going to obviously read out the titles, because they have excellent titles. So the first one is called Filmed Before a Live Studio Audience. And this is when it's set in the 1950s. So the series actually begins in the 50s. That's the era. And then the second episode is called Don't Touch That Dial. And this is set in the 60s. And then the third episode is called Now in Colour, and that is set in the 70s. So it progresses over 10 years per episode in the first 3 episodes at least. So yeah.
So these are pretty elusive episodes, and lots of people were quite confused when they were watching. And as we said before, we think a few people will probably watch the first 1 or 2 episodes and switched off. So what were your standout moments, Rosie, from these first 3? And what were you thinking when you were watching them? Because I know I was quite confused. I enjoyed it, but I was like, what is happening? So were you the same?
Yeah, I was exactly the same. Like, because obviously we'd seen like the promo and the trailers and stuff. So we didn't, it wasn't a complete surprise when we saw the whole sitcom thing. Like, at least we'd been given a bit of an indication about it. But also, like, with Marvel, you always know there's more than it seems. Like, you always know that going in, you always know there's something else going on. So I think, like, I was watching the sitcom, like, kind of vibes, and I was like, this is great. But I was also like, what is actually happening here? But obviously my first question was, like, Vision. I was like, how is Vision here? Like, why is he here? Because my first thoughts were like, is this a dream? Like, is Wanda having a dream about a sitcom? And obviously she wants to be with Vision, and he's dead, so she can't be in real life. And I think Vision is like where obviously the beginning theories all kind of stemmed from, because that is the main thing that people are questioning. Like, how is he there? He can't physically be there. Like, he's actually died. So for me, it was kind of like I already had questions about how Vision came to be, and also what world we were actually in, whether it was real, whether it was like a kind of multiverse sort of thing, or like an alternate reality. They were the main things going through my head, because I was like, I know Marvel, and I know this isn't just going to be an actual sitcom. So yeah, they were like my first like beginning thoughts. And I was definitely confused, because especially because obviously we got the first 2 episodes on Disney Plus in the first week. They came out together. So I remember like watching the first one, which, by the way, they were like 20-minute episodes, and it was just too short. Like, it worked. It worked in the sense, I understand why they did it to an extent, but also it was too short, because like I was watching it with my boyfriend, and he nearly gave up at that point, and he's a massive Marvel fan. And he was like, I'm sorry, this is not what I was expecting. I was like, just trust Marvel. You have to trust Marvel. When have they ever let you down? So obviously we carried on. And then the second episode is kind of like more of the same of the first to begin with the sitcom like premise. And you're just seeing them living this like suburban lifestyle. Like, obviously they've just got married, and you kind of realize they don't know like about their past in the second episode, because that's when they have the dinner with, what even are their names? It's Vision's boss, isn't it, and his wife?
That's in the first one, isn't it?
Is it in the first one?
That's the first
one. Is it
one.
the end?
First one is with Vision and because Mr. and Mrs. Hart.
That's it. That's the name.
The second one is the one with the talent show.
Oh yes, the
and
magic.
The one where like Wanda's trying to fit in with like the women of the
town.
Yeah,
I remember.
And that's where we meet. Well, we know that she ends up being Monica. What was her name?
Something like Gladys or something like that. I feel like it was. Geraldine. It was Geraldine.
I was like, I
know it began with a G. I was close. But yeah, like basically, I was definitely confused, but I was also like intrigued. I think intrigued is the best way to describe it, because it was just so unique. Marvel haven't done anything like that before. So I was thinking like, this is so different to anything we've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I think like that kind of hooked me, even though for a lot of people it did the opposite and kind of turned them away. For me, it was like, I can't wait to see where this is going.
Yeah.
So yeah, and standout moments, I feel like, I guess like, I don't really think there were like standout moments for me. I mean, the dinner with, I've already forgotten the names.
Mr. and Mrs. Hart.
Thank you. That was quite a standout moment of the first episode. And then the magic show was a standout episode, so like the talent show. But specifically Vision and Wanda do a magic show together. And obviously like in that episode you get to know like a few more characters in Westview.
Yeah, because we meet Dottie, don't we?
Yeah, we meet Dottie.
Geraldine.
And obviously Agnes we were introduced to in the first episode.
Of course.
As the nosy neighbour, of course. So she's the first one that we see of the, I believe, of the people of Westview, I think.
Yeah. She just turns up, doesn't she?
Yeah. Very conveniently and very strangely, but you don't question it because it's a sitcom, so you're like, interesting. So I think those 2 episodes, they were kind of like building like the context and the groundwork for what was to come later.
Yeah.
But they were just so different. They were so different to anything we've ever had like from Marvel. So I don't know, did you feel the same?
Yeah, I think I did. I think, do you know what though? I think I enjoyed the sitcom more than most people.
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember coming back, and I remember because I think I'd been like out for tea with my family like at home because of pandemic. So I was out for tea. It just meant going to someone else's house for tea. And being really excited to come back and watch. And I remember turning the first episode on and waiting for there to be like a break or for there to be some kind of like flashback or something. And then if you've seen it, you'll know how annoying that "please stand by."
Oh, it was such a meme because it was so annoying.
When the episode ended and I was like, oh, okay.
Especially the first
so
two.
Short.
That was...
But I really enjoyed the whole like change of pace. As soon as I saw it was black and white, I was like, oh no, because I'm not a massive fan of black and white stuff. But it didn't even bother me. It honestly didn't bother me then. I think because it was so well done, it just didn't bother me. So I loved that fact, and I really loved the fact that we got to see like two characters who are like I've always loved Wanda in particular. I'm really intrigued, and it was nice to see Vision come out of his shell and like do more rather than just kind of like floating around being philosophical. It was quite nice to see them as people. Because that's what we got in those first two episodes. We got their personalities. We got to see them as a couple together because we never really saw that.
We saw like bits moments. Of it.
As the bits in like Edinburgh before that massive fight in Infinity War. So we saw bits, but it was always I remember watching Infinity War and wondering if I'd missed a film because it felt like there was more to it that we hadn't seen. So I really enjoyed the opportunity to see that and just enjoy them being together. Because as well know from other previous podcasts, I'm very character focused. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed getting to know that world because then I love having questions, Obviously you're curious. But for me, one of the standout moments was in the first episode when we had when Mr. and Mrs. Hart come in for dinner, and it's all very like, ooh, what's happening? And Mr. Hart starts to choke. And Wanda very quickly changes from her like housewife mentality, and she snaps out of it and is like, Vision, help him. And that was like an indicator that something, as you said before, something else was coming. There was something else underneath the surface. And the fact that we knew about Wanda's history, because he talks about her being from Europe, but we don't hear anything about, like, they're like, when did we even get married? How do we have rings? And all these different things. So you knew that, like, what you were seeing was a mask for something else. I think if people didn't appreciate that, I don't really know what to say to that, because I think it was quite obvious from the beginning that it wasn't always going to be a sitcom.
I agree.
I could be wrong, but that was how it was for me. Especially at the end of number 2, when it bursts into colour. We get right at the end of episode 2.
That was really well done as well.
Episode 2, again, I really enjoyed, because, of course, episode 2 has the radio. Where that's the first time we hear someone trying to get through to Wanda, isn't it? On the radio. The outside world enters, and that's when we have that moment where it reverts, time reverses. And I remember thinking my TV had cut out, so that was a big that moment for me.
That was a really, really good moment. I think was that
my TV?
At that point, I think we were saying, like, that week, because we discussed the episodes every week, I think we were saying, like, who is that voice? Like, who is this? And we were like, are they an enemy? Like, are they the person keeping Wanda here?
Yeah, because remember at the end of episode 1, they had like you could see Wanda and Vision on a television screen, like a computer TV screen, and someone making notes. So at this point, I think we were all assuming like someone's trapped them in there and like is monitoring them and keeping notes.
Exactly.
Until we reach the end of episode 2, when they come out of the house and they see someone in like a beekeeper's outfit, and Wanda's face drops. And she says, no, and rewinds time.
I wish you could do that in real life.
So, I think those... And number 2, I honestly, this show made me laugh so much. I don't know how they did it.
Agree.
Like, number 3, when she's pregnant in number 3, and so her magic goes out of the window, basically. And, like, she sneezes and, like, things appear. The stalk. The stalk in number 3... actually nearly made me wet myself. It was so funny. It was when it just kept appearing Elizabeth Olsen's face.
I know.
All the way through. So that was like a funny stand-up moment. And then obviously at the end of episode 3, we get the moment where it really starts kicking into gear, doesn't it? When we have Geraldine mentions because Wanda talks, she has her twins that
Yes.
she magically has in one episode.
Yeah, everything moves very quickly in Westview, we find
2 days,
out.
I think.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours, she has
twins. Really, really fast. Yeah.
And when she becomes pregnant, it's literally within a second. Like, nothing happens physically. She just becomes pregnant.
She just has one baby and then realises that there's another on the way.
Yeah.
That's pretty much
and
it.
Geraldine, one of the people in Westview, appears to help her deliver this baby. And then she talks about, oh, I'm a twin. I'm my brother Pietro. And then who mentions Ultron? Geraldine does, and that moment, I'll never forget that, because that was the very first moment. Although we'd seen it at the end of episode 2, it wasn't quite in the same way.
Yeah.
They're like then and the Sokovian accent.
I know, that was a big moment.
And basically, Geraldine gets blasted literally from the Hex to the outside world. And that was a real standout.
That's the first time we actually see the outside world as well, and that's the first kind of time where it's properly connected to the MCU, because before that it is very much like a fantasy sitcom.
Yeah.
We don't quite know where it's set, like we don't really know what's going on. No. And then when we see her like being thrown out of the Hex into real world, you're like, wow, okay, so this place is actually in the real world then. It's just these people are living in a different way. And that was so interesting, because then we had more questions. Always more questions. So
especially because when she gets thrown out of the Hex and she lands onto the grass, we suddenly see what looks like a military base just outside this, like the Hex, like big like red force field type stuff. And we're like, who are these people? Are they trying to like capture Wanda? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. That was a really like big moment where we started to realize that this is real.
Yeah.
It might not look real, but it's happening in the real world.
Yeah.
Because like you say, I think we were all thinking like, is it a dream? Is it like, I was thinking there's some kind of like Avatar situation going on where she's like put herself in like a deep sleep, living through her brain. I don't know.
Or someone had put her there, like.
That was the big question, wasn't it? The whole question throughout the whole series is Wanda in charge?
Yeah.
Or is someone else in charge?
And in that scene where she does throw Geraldine out, you're kind of like, interesting. So she does have control over this world. And you think, okay, Wanda has complete control. But alas, you find out.
We were wrong. So I think that episode 3, I think, is where we really start to see like things ramping up a bit, because that's when you obviously have the pregnancy, it's back in colour. And then it's that moment when Geraldine goes, like he was killed by Ultron, and just that moment where literally the venom in Wanda's face insane.
I know.
Because the whole time we've had like classic housewife vibes. So yeah, very different, very cool. And I think it's a really good intro, because I don't think the ending would be anywhere near as impactful had we not had episodes 1 to 3.
I completely agree, because actually, do you know what I've just realised that we haven't said about yet is Agnes. So in episode 3, whilst Wanda is giving birth with Geraldine there, do you remember Vision rushes back?
Yeah.
And
Herb outside.
Yes, and Herb's like he's seemingly cut through a wall, and Agnes is talking to Herb, and it's like they're kind of like whispering. So Vision's like, oh, what's going on? And like Agnes is basically like, we don't know where Geraldine's come from. Like, she doesn't live here. So then
she hasn't got a home.
Yeah.
Like this.
So that's when you're kind of thinking, what is up with Agnes?
And we thought we were going to get answers at that point, because it was like, cause the way they were making out was that Agnes and Herb knew something about Wanda as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we were thinking, well, is Geraldine the villain? Is she the one that's come to infiltrate? And Vision nearly gets an answer out of both of them, and then Agnes kind of walks off, and Herb returns to his normal self.
Yeah, they go back into their like roles.
Us thinking we were going to get some kind of answer.
I know, that early on.
We were wrong.
So it very much builds a lot of characters, and gives you kind of an idea of where you think it's going, but it sends you off in an interesting direction.
We definitely went on an interesting journey.
Yes.
How did you feel watching the black and white stuff? Like when it came on as black and white, were you surprised? I was surprised, but I really liked it. I like kind of old like movie styles. The bit for me that like I don't like live audience, like I like what's it called, laughing tracks. Oh, really?
So I like it in Friends. I can deal with it in Friends, but that's because it was live. But when I know that like it wasn't a live laughing track.
This one was though.
Well, I read that, but was it? Because
Yeah.
I've seen some people say it was, and some people say it wasn't.
Yeah, it was, because that's what I was reading about before, was that Elizabeth Olsen was saying how nerve-wracking it was in front of a live audience.
Interesting.
They normally just have like the crew.
Yeah.
So she was like, it was really nerve-wracking to have to film in front of a live audience, and I remember reading about it at the time. What they tend to do with laughing tracks, because I watch quite a few shows with laughing tracks, and they tend to use like the normal laughter as well. That's what they record.
Yeah.
But they'll kind of like top it up with canned laughter, like if they need to, or if there's like a sound problem. So it tends to be like a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
Is how, because people tend to think that it's only ever canned laughter like as a track, and it's not. They always mix the two, unless it's like a deliberate sitcom episode, for example, that doesn't normally film in front of an audience. But for those first two, I think they did. Yeah.
Interesting, because I can find it quite annoying, like when I watch a series and there's the laugh track, because sometimes I don't laugh when the laugh track laughs, so I'm like, it puts me off, it throws me off a bit, because I'm like, that wasn't funny to me. So I prefer it when it doesn't have that. But
it's funny, I think I've become like, I don't even hear it anymore.
you're
weird.
So like used
because
to it.
I watch Friends, and I'm a massive Big Bang Theory
Yeah.
fan, and they both have like laughter tracks in, and I watch How I Met Your Mother as well. So I think like I've just kind of become accustomed to the laughter. I just kind of tune it out. So I probably didn't even notice it as much in this one.
So like to begin with, I was thinking, oh no, like are we gonna have this the whole series? Because I was like, I don't know if I can do that, because that's too weird. But I very quickly got used to it. As you get used to like the eras moving on, you get used to like the color coming in. Like you have like black and white, suddenly you're in color. Like everything changes. Like their costumes change, like their hair changes, because like Vision's hair goes like bleach blonde when we get into like the 70s. Wanda's hairstyles change. Like, so I feel like you kind of get used to things very quickly, and things change a lot anyway. So you don't have to kind of spend too much time on them. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the change and stuff.
They have like, because things initially, it's quite shocking that things change so quickly.
Yeah, it is.
You get used to it, so you don't really get attached to anything.
You're just like, well, it's you're not surprised
anyway.
Exactly. Every time something changes, you're like, oh, okay, like cool. Like it becomes so normal. It becomes something you expect to happen. It's just like the intros to each episode as well.
Oh, I love the intros. The fact that they changed to adapt to the time period.
I love that. Cool. And they each had like a different jingle as well. That was really cool.
Amazing. It's also worth pointing out that the songs for this were written by Kristen and Robert Lopez as well.
Yeah.
The Frozen songs.
And composed by Christoph Beck, who was also the composer for Frozen as well.
So, which you wouldn't think. Again, it's really strange. Like, you wouldn't think that the Frozen team would be part of WandaVision.
No.
They were.
Yeah.
That's why the music is banging in this series.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it was the kind of thing where I was expecting something weird. It was odd. It was different. I think I was expecting more like, because all like the promo was like split between like the olden days style stuff and the modern day style stuff. So I thought we were going to get a mixture of both in every episode, like a flashback and a present, etc., etc. So that was the only thing that kind of like I was expecting. But I was impressed with what we got. I thought it was really cool. Like in those first 2 episodes, it was really good.
Yeah.
They covered a lot of ground, and it just set up, I think, for the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Really well.
It set the scene, and I think it was needed for that reason. Without it, I just don't think it would have the same effect.
No way. I agree.
So.
Oh.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Well, moving on to Disney Fun Fact number 3 already. So,
that was quick. How did that happen?
I know. So Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany had their first quarrel during this show, and it was dubbed Snotgate, and happened during an emotional kiss when someone's nose started running.
Oh, I mean, in COVID as well.
I know, that's not what you need. That is not what you need. But that is quite funny.
I love how, like, both of them, like, when you read the interview about this, they're both like, well, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I think Paul Bettany was like, she'll try and tell you some kind of crook and hook story about how it was me, but it's not true.
I love it as well because they're clearly both very close. Like when you watch them in interviews, you can tell they're really good friends now.
And that works so well on the screen
as
well. That's
chemistry is there.
So good.
So good.
So with segment 3, we move on to episodes 4 through to 6. So the next 3 episodes are, the first one is called We Interrupt This Programme. Now this doesn't really fit into a time period. It's present day, this one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, technically actually, because it's after Endgame, it's like 4 years in the future. future.
Yeah.
So this basically like looks back at the past three, but in the present day. So when Geraldine gets kicked out of the Hex, we find out she's actually Monica Rambeau, who, if you've seen Captain Marvel, you'll know that she's the little girl in that, basically.
Yeah.
And this episode kind of picks up straight after Endgame finishes, with when everyone returns from the blip. So what we get then is a kind of a catch up for present day of what's happened whilst Wanda's been in her fantasy world. So it doesn't have like a specific time element like the rest of them do. The next one is on a very special episode, which is 1980s, and then the third one is All New Halloween Spooktacular in the 90s, which is all Halloween themed. We loved it.
Yes, and what a name for an episode as well.
I know.
That sounds like one of what we'd name a podcast episode.
Yeah, we might actually steal that for next year's Halloween episode.
Yeah, so these episodes are kind of where things start to kind of get more interesting, and you begin to have more questions and theories forming about where it's going, because you kind of had you've had the scene set in the first three, but in these three, obviously you see like in the real world bits of what has happened, so that's interesting because that then connects you to that, and then obviously you're seeing like what's going on with the episodes in the real world. Like it kind of connects the two together, and I think it brings WandaVision into the world of the MCU properly.
Yeah, we start to get both sides, don't we, as opposed to just Wanda's side.
Which I think for a lot of people, maybe that were having doubts in the first three episodes, was maybe where they actually kind of were interested. Like they were like, okay, now this is Marvel. Because I think a lot of people would say like this is where the Marvel elements came into it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so we have some new characters and some familiar characters from other Marvel films, which are introduced to the series. And the people of Westview and Vision start to become more suspicious with the happenings of the town in these three episodes, and kind of with Wanda, particularly Vision. So there's a lot going on in these three. So what were your standout moments, Katie? And again, what were you thinking as you were watching?
Oh, I think at this point we'd realised, hadn't we, that Wanda was kind of in control of the people.
Yeah.
I think when we saw her kick Geraldine, who ended up getting her out, I think we realised that she had more control over this area than we knew, than we thought about. We realised that, because initially you start, like in the first episode, you think they're the outsiders and they're hiding their powers, and then you realise actually she's using her powers to create the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that we're kind of more aware of that now. I loved episode 4 when it picked up from the blip, because it picks up in a hospital, because Monica has just basically, like, before the blip was in a hospital room with her mum. Her mum was suffering from cancer, and she basically returns because she was like wiped out during Thanos' blip. She returns to the sea, and the chaos in that sea.
Oh my god, it's unbelievable.
Like, I think it brings, again, that's why I quite like this series. It brings the reality of the blip to the forefront, because when you're kind of watching Endgame, it's all like, it's very like
fantastical, like not realistic. Whereas this, it's like, whoa, this is what happened. Wow.
And you see it from like a normal person's perspective, and the panic, like there's like gurneys appearing out of like nowhere, and nurses like falling out the sky, and it's like, it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So we pick up there, which I loved. I love that we kind of got that real person side of Marvel. And I think what I find a bit difficult about episode 4 was that it felt a bit slower, like at first, because I was like, I want to know about Wanda.
Yeah.
Because obviously at the end of episode 3, we kind of got evil Wanda for a second. So I was like, what's happening to Wanda? So that was definitely like a bit of not a problem, but I think when you've been so hooked and absorbed in her world for those first 3 episodes, you're like, but where's Wanda though?
Yeah.
But then once you get into it, it's fine. And then obviously Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man comes in.
What a babe.
I know. He really is a babe.
He is.
So he appears, and that episode, that whole episode is really interesting, because, like you say, that they're discovering things that we already know about as well, which you feel, for once in this series, you feel educated about what's going on. And then obviously we get Darcy from Thor, and that's great. I love kind of when she sat there watching all of that. I love watching the reruns when she's watching them. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I love that.
So, and my favourite standout moment, potentially of the whole series, to be honest, is that moment where, so there's a point where they try and send drones in into the Hex, and what they realise is when they send things in, they obviously get changed for the time period, and they can't get like a camera feed and stuff. And Wanda finds one of these things, basically tracks down the fact that it's people just chilling outside her hex, and she walks out of the hex
Oh my God.
in like her like casual Scarlet Witch costume.
That
Which
was
we now,
insane.
which we now, if you think about it later on, because when she went into the hex, she was wearing like a tracksuit and a coat.
Yeah.
So when you think back, she put that outfit on purpose
Yeah.
to intimidate people. I just realised that. So she walks out in like a classic red coat, flings the like helicopter thing at them. The Sokovian accent comes back, and we get threatening Wanda. Oh my God, that was such a good moment. Like the power she held in that moment when all the guns point on her and she turns them to point at the. So obviously we're introduced to Sword at this point as well, who are like
sentient weapon.
Not observation.
Operations and division, something like operations and. I did a quiz on this last week.
We did.
I've already forgotten it, but basically it's about like
research?
Sentient. Yeah, maybe research division. Like
basically, they look at weapons. So we're introduced to them as well. So she comes out and she basically turns all of the guns onto like Hayward, who's the director. That moment for me was a massive standout because I think then we saw how dangerous she was. We've never really seen one to be dangerous intentionally. We've seen it accidentally, but not intentionally. That was amazing. And the fact that then she just walks back in, like, and then it's the happy housewife again. Then you start to sense that there's a lot more going on for her beneath the surface as well, and you realise again that she knows it's not real.
Yeah.
That's when we kind of know.
That's when it's acknowledged that she actually knows, like, she is in this, and she's fine with that. Like,
yeah, and she wants to protect it.
Yeah.
And she'll do so at all costs.
So that's kind of how we know that it's not someone else putting her there. Like, that answers that question, kind of.
Yeah, that's true actually. So yeah, because it gets more complicated, doesn't it, as to how she actually gets there.
Yeah.
Whenever anyone asks her throughout the series, she's like, I don't know, which is fair. She probably doesn't know, as we find out later on. So yeah, that was a standout moment for me. And then we move into like the Halloween episode as well. Oh, actually no, there's the 80s episode where she has kids.
Yes.
Which I loved that. That was
me too.
I never knew I needed Avengers kids until episode 8.
That is a very important episode as well because something happens to a dog.
Episode 5.
Sparky.
Well, but she doesn't really feel that significant at the time. That is interesting because we see the fact that like, so the kids get a dog, don't they? And then the dog dies.
Yeah.
Which felt weird anyway, but then it's also like this whole situation is weird, so who knows? And it's weird that like the kids ask Wanda to bring the dog back to life.
Yeah.
It's like they know that she has some sort of life power. It's interesting.
It is interesting.
But she won't, and so it's like she's not trying to make it a perfect life.
No. She's
trying to make it a realistic just life of what she wants. She just wants a family. She just wants that people in her life that she loves.
Yeah.
Because she teaches the boys about grief. But it's ironic. She's like, oh, well, you know, when things are gone, they're gone. It's like, really, Wanda?
Yeah.
Tell yourself.
Is that why you've been acting like this every episode?
Is that why you've brought Vision potentially back to life?
You can't bring people back from the dead.
Oh,
literally.
Because in episode 4, we also get told that Wanda has stolen Vision's
body.
Yeah,
from Sword, headquarters.
Yeah. So the Sword director claims that, and we're under the impression that it's true, that Wanda has broken into Sword HQ and has stolen Vision's body because annoyingly Sword took Vision from the battlefield in Wakanda because they claim that's what he wanted because he wanted to be taken apart because he uses a weapon.
Yeah.
That's what they tell us.
Lies.
So again, that they're kind of framing Wanda as the villain at that point, aren't they? So at this point, we're starting to see more of like the villainous Wanda, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But episode 5 is the 80s episode. I love the outfits in this one. I really like this. With like her hair, like on, it was really cool.
I loved it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one was really interesting. The fact that we got with the kids and stuff like that.
And Agnes is around a lot.
Oh, is this the one where Agnes comes in as like, should I take it again?
Yeah, I think so. This is the one where she's there constantly with the kids, which we realise we understand why when it comes to Ellie's episode. But yeah, it's when she's always there and she's very prominent.
And the kids like, oh, and magic starts happening in front of Agnes.
Yes.
And Wanda isn't concerned about it, and Vision's like,
Vision's finally kind of picking up on things and thinking,
things,
like, hello, like Agnes is right there, she might see you. So like, that's when he begins to kind of question what's going on.
Because up until now, he's kind of been part of their life quite easily.
Yeah.
Like any kind of odd things, he just kind of brushed it off as like, oh, well, I'm an android, so of course I understand.
Yeah.
But once we hit episode 5, he starts to actually question things. And then at the end of episode 5, we get a very special cameo that I didn't realise was a cameo.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, Rosie, you can tell us about the cameo because it meant nothing to me.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I've already forgotten his name.
Evan Peters.
Thank you, Evan Peters. So, to be fair, I didn't actually know, like, at first glance who he was. So I was kind of similar to you. I was like, who is this person?
I'd seen, like, on Facebook and stuff, I'd seen, like, massive cameo, like, at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Like, so I was like, ooh.
Yeah, and then it happens, you're like... Because, like, for me, when that moment happened, so basically, Evan Peters, who is from X-Men, specifically, is he in Fantastic Four?
Do you know what, Rosie? I couldn't tell you.
Could be wrong, apologies, X-Men fans, but he's basically in the X-Men universe. And a lot of people clearly knew this and follow it.
People were buzzing.
I
had no idea.
I had a rough idea, but I didn't know it as well as I probably should have. And so he appears at Wanda's door. And
it's in
this
the middle
is
of an argument, isn't it? Because Wanda and Vision are having a massive
they're having a big
Vision.
argument.
Vision has started to question Wanda.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of like... We discovered that Vision can actually remove Wanda's spell.
Yes.
So by this point, we know
With
that
Norm.
everyone's under Wanda's spell.
Yeah.
Like, mentally. So we find out that Vision can actually remove that spell and get to the real person.
Yeah.
So he has that with someone in work, and he's saying, like, tell Wanda to, like, let us go. Or
Yeah.
So Vision comes home and starts questioning Wanda, and they're both hovering. It's all very intense. Well, like, is he going to know? Are we going to get answers? Like, is he going to ask?
And that's what we were wanting. We were like, come on. And then the door rings, and they're both like, and the fact that Wanda didn't know who it was, that was very telling. Like,
we were all very confused.
She wasn't like expecting anyone, and Vision was like, oh, did you do that? Like, did you send this person? Because that's when he kind of knows what's going on with that. And she's like, no, I didn't. And then she answers the door, and it's basically Evan Peters, but it's Pietro. So he looks like Pietro, but not the same Pietro that we know. Different.
He doesn't look like Pietro to us.
No.
But Wanda recognises him as
Pietro. Yeah, exactly. And he's obviously like stylized to look similar to the Pietro that we know, so that we can make the connection when we're watching it.
I didn't, but that's
did you not?
No, that's what
I made that connection.
He's got a completely different face shape and
hair, the bleach blonde hair.
Yeah, well, Vision had bleached blonde hair in the episode before. I didn't think it was
Pietro. But it wouldn't be a big moment if it was some randomer. Like, I knew it was Pietro. Like, I knew that. But I didn't know that Evan Peters was like this big like cameo guy. So basically, he turns up. And it's all very confusing because Wanda doesn't know why he's turned up. And he's not the same.
Also, Pietro died.
Exactly.
In Ultron. So everyone's like, sorry? Because
obviously she's mentioned that as well in the previous episodes. She said that her brother died. And now she's faced with her brother, but it's not her brother. And it's all just very strange because at that point, at the end of the episode, you're like, who is this? Because we know it's not Pietro. Like, we know it's not actually him.
Yeah.
Because he's dead. But obviously, because Vision's been brought back to life in the Hex, you're thinking, oh, okay, so Wanda has tried to bring back her brother in the Hex in this form. But then it's confusing because you're like, actually, but Wanda was kind of confused by this. So did she? And it's like, did she actually do it subconsciously? Like, you don't know. And that's why it's
because she's arguing with Vision, so you wonder, does she need someone else to come in and support her? Because do you know what I love? I think the sitcom elements start to break down properly in this episode as well. Like, I love the bit when Wanda storms up the kitchen and starts running the credits.
Yeah.
And Vision's like, what, should we go to bed and just have another day and that's it? Like, you can't end the day for me or something. And she's like, yes, I can.
Oh, I love that. But I also love like Vision's sass because he starts to get like a bit more like dominant because he is quite like passive, like not in a bad way, but he's quite passive. He's very like polite, like he's very like gentle. He's a really nice guy, so he doesn't really like, you know, shout out at anything. So like to see him
when he shouted, it was shocking.
Exactly, to see him get aggravated because he's quite quietly spoken as well. He's quite softly spoken.
Well, especially when we've seen him in battle and everything. He wasn't that aggressive.
No, he's always just very civilized, polite gentleman. So like to see him actually get angry about something and to shout and get sassy, that's when you're kind of like, whoa, like what is happening to this character? So yeah, the end of that episode, we get Pietro, and we're all just like, how is her brother back? Like, is it her brother? It can't be her brother.
Some of us had to go and Google what happened.
Yeah. But then it was like, what does this mean? Like, what does this now mean? Like, has Wanda brought him back as a comfort?
We had more questions
Yes.
rather than answers.
Oh,
that's the theme of this show.
Always. That was literally every single episode. It was, I don't know what's going on. And I don't know.
And by this point, she has, like, her kids are, like, 8 and 9
Yeah,
as well, aren't they?
yeah. Exactly. So then in the next episode, the Halloween Spooktacular, that is when we see more of this Pietro character.
And it makes less sense, because I feel like at the end of episode 5, we thought, oh, like, what's going to happen with Pietro? But then he turns up, and he's, like, nothing like the Pietro we remember at all.
Mm-hmm. So different.
He's just, like, a bit of an idiot,
Mm-hmm.
a bit of, like, a grown-up teenager.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It is.
And it's also quite clear that both Wanda and Vision are uncomfortable having him in the house.
Yeah.
But Wanda's like, but he's my brother, isn't he? So, like, I've got to keep him here.
Yeah.
But she's clearly not comfortable having him there.
No, and because he's spending time with the kids as well. Like, he's trying to be, like, the fun uncle with the kids.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like she thinks, like, she wants to leave him. But also, just because purely, like, he is dead in the real world, she kind of wants to hang on to some sort of, like, Pietro, like, some sort of version of him. So, yeah, she's kind of, like, in denial. I think that's when you see her in, like, denial stages, I think, when
She
he's
starts
there.
to get stressed, doesn't she?
Yeah,
with
she does.
Things start to go wrong, because people start to question her. Kids are questioning her. She's losing control of her kids because Pietro is with them. Vision lies to her for the first time in this episode when he says that he's going to do the neighbourhood watch, and he's not. He's going to investigate the situation because he doesn't believe her.
Which is super interesting.
It is, because the first time that we kind of see them apart as well, because normally they're always together in the show, and we see them they're apart for most of the episode.
Yeah,
and we also get their iconic comic book classic outfit.
Yeah, that was one of the best parts of that episode, definitely.
Really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this episode because that's the one again where we start to not necessarily get answers, but the two worlds start to merge a bit more, and we start to get more answers about Westview. So, like, when Vision goes, like, further and further, and he starts to see that, like, people are stuck, because Wanda's power doesn't extend far enough to actually control them in the same way that they do in the town centre. And this is the one, isn't it, where Vision tries to leave the house.
Yeah, he tries to go to Ellis Road is the end of Westview. That's what it's called. But yeah, he tries to leave and he's not able to.
He starts breaking apart.
Yeah.
And we're all very confused because he starts flaking off.
Yeah.
And no one will help him either.
No, because we've got Darcy, so on the other side, Darcy's there and obviously Sword are there. And, like, she is kind of like, what is going on? Like, she wants to help him, but she's also at that point, isn't she already, like, tied up by Sword?
Yeah.
Because they've already caught them.
By this point, because obviously Monica is trying to stand up for Wanda.
Yeah.
Sword is just ready to go in and basically shoot her.
Yeah.
Because they've already tried to do that, it didn't go very well.
Yeah.
So at this point, we start to see a divide in the outside world as well. So we see Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy kind of separate off from the main Sword crew because they're kicked out of basically questioning. And so there we start to see a divide as well. And we're then wondering, right, well, because that's when people start to question Hayward, who's the director of Sword.
Yeah.
And wonder what their motives are. It starts to get a bit more confusing because that's when we see that they're tracking Vision, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're tracking because that's when they're like, why is he, like, coming to the surface? Like, because you see, like, a dot on their, like, map, and it's really interesting. But that's also the episode where Pietro and Wanda have a conversation, and Pietro is like, so how did you do it, Wanda? Like, how did you create this? Like, what made you do it? Like, how did you do all of this? And her face is like, she's like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? Like, so that's so interesting because it's like, who is he to question that? How does he know? Like, why is he not one of her, like, robots?
I think
minions?
we all started to question at that point who had sent him because he was too investigative. I don't know.
He was too nosy.
Yeah. Like, it didn't make sense. He was asking too many questions that no one else in the town was asking. So that's when you start to think he's been sent in. Because I think before that we thought maybe, like, she'd subconsciously summoned him for support.
Well, exactly. We thought, like, maybe it was, like, to do with the grief, like a comforter, like, to bring someone else back into the world. So.
But for this bit, you start to realise maybe all is not as it's
Yes. that is when you kind of get a very real kind of feeling that Wanda is not completely in control and doesn't really know how this all happened.
Because even when he asks her, doesn't he, she says, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we missed a section, actually. Which was the one where we saw Vision dead?
Oh, yeah.
Episode 3.
That was in one of the early episodes, yeah. I
think it was episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
After Geraldine gets kicked out.
Yeah.
Either episode 3 or episode 5, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
We start Vision, and that happens in episode 6 with Pietro as well.
Yeah, it
where
does.
Wanda starts to kind of see flashes of people, like, as they died. So you can see, like, that was so creepy.
It was
Vision.
horrible.
It's like a flash. Like, his face is pale and the Mind Stone is gone.
Yeah.
And there's one with Pietro where he's just covered in bullet holes.
Oh,
like,
that was even worse. At the bullet holes.
Traumatic.
That was horrible.
So, like you say, you can kind of tell at that point that she's not in full control of what she's seeing either all the time.
Yeah.
With her grief breaking through. And then at the end of episode 6... then we realise that her kids have powers as well. Because her son starts saying, like, I can feel Dad's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Wanda starts to get stressed. She doesn't know what to do. So what does she do? She expands the hex. And what that does is that brings Sword into her world. Most of Sword into her world. And they become a circus. Which we see later on in the next episode. So that, again, is another turning point. Because, again, we're like... well, if there's no one here monitoring her...
yeah, then you're, like, sort of been taken in. So you're like, okay, so now what? How does this pan out? Because they won't know who they are.
Taken in as well, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. But then we kind of know that Jimmy and Monica have made it. And we also know that director Hayward has made it. So that's interesting because you're like, so they're still in the outside world. They are the people that can somehow fix this. That's what you're thinking at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of questions. That episode, I remember... like at the end with the hex extending was just amazing. Like
visually it was so cool.
It really was, yeah. So yes, a lot happened. So briefly, what was your kind of main theory at the end of episode 6? Like, what did you think was going to happen next?
Do you know, I didn't have a clue. At this point, I was like, I just don't know. I think in those 3 episodes was where I was more leaning towards the fact that Wanda thought she was in control. That was the way I was seeing it, is that Wanda thought she was, but I was starting to think that someone else had kind of put her there, or was controlling her, or was using her to find something out, or to like harness her power or whatever. Because the Pietro stuff started to throw into question, and the fact that people were like losing control, like the fact that Vision was starting to doubt, she was clearly losing control on the area.
Yeah.
So I think I was starting to think, yes, she's in control, but someone else has put her in this situation.
Yeah.
And obviously for a while we start to think that it's Agnes, don't we? Because when they talk about like the when Sword discussed the people who are in there, we find out that the people that are in there are all real people in real life.
Yeah.
So the people that are in Westview are real. They're just under a spell. But Agnes is never on that board.
No. They can't. So
we all
find
start
her.
to think like, and online everyone's like, ooh, like it's Agatha Harkness from like the comics who comes in as like Wanda's mentor. But then in the Halloween episode, we see Vision take her out from underneath Wanda's spell.
Yeah.
So then we're all like, well, that's theory
we're like,
out
for
the window.
goodness sake, because like she's completely like, you see her as if she's like under Wanda's spell. Then, like you said, Vision seemingly takes her out of it, and then she's just gone back into, because she's completely like sat there still, like not doing anything.
She's frozen like the rest of the people on the outskirts.
Because she's right at the edge. So then Vision like obviously taps into her. And then we kind of see her, and then she goes back.
That's when she tells Vision that he's dead. Do you remember?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Which obviously was very intentional of her, to cause concerns.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that at that point I was like, I don't know what's going on, because I think up until that point I was like, there's loads of things online that were like, oh, it's Mephisto.
Oh yeah, the comic villain. Yeah.
And Agatha is coming to like be his right hand woman, and I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then that happened at the end of episode 6, and I was like, well, I don't know anymore. I don't know.
It kind of threw everyone off the scent a bit, and we were all just searching for someone else. But like, I feel like deep down we still kind of knew something was off with her.
But I was also at that point I was like, maybe she's under someone else's
spell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what about you? Were you on the same page?
Yeah, I think like you kind of had theories through those 3 episodes, but then they kind of all got taken aside because something would happen. You'd be like, oh, okay, that theory doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because like my theory was Agnes like for the starting episodes, because she just always did weird things, or she would always be there. So I was like, this character's here for a reason. Like,
especially episode 5, when she's like aware of the sitcom setup.
Yeah.
She is okay with magic.
Yeah, and she seems obsessed with the boys, and she's the one that finds Sparky dead. So I was like, interesting. Like, why is she in it so much? Like, there's got to be something about her that means she's a bit more important than what we're seeing.
We barely see her in episode 6.
Yeah.
Marvel knows how to play us, I swear.
They do. They kept us on the edge of our seats for this whole thing.
They did.
But yeah, so I was kind of like, who knows where this is going? I think I was kind of going on like the Mephisto lines at this point, because I was like, well, in the comics, there's this villain.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And a lot of the WandaVision kind of up to this point was aligning with
Yeah.
House of M, is that what it's called?
Yeah, yes.
Which is like linked in the comics. The plot line was basically the same.
Yeah.
So we were all thinking, well, if that's in the comics,
There
then
we
sure,
go.
we'll carry on. To be continued.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
So that makes it Disney fun fact number 4.
Yes.
So when Paul Bettany, who plays Vision, was called by Marvel for them to pitch WandaVision to him, he thought they were firing him because he'd already died. And they thought that he thought, this is my time, they're gonna let me down gently. And apparently he went into the phone call or like the meeting and was like, listen, like, I know I've had a good run, that's fine. And they were like, no, we've got a TV shoot we want you to be on. And he was like, oh, okay.
We're not done with you yet. Marvel are never done. That's the thing. They're never done with characters. Like, you can.
And it's really nice that Paul Bettany has come out this week and said that, a bit like with what Chris Hemsworth said, that he'll basically play Vision forever.
Yeah, I love that.
I hope he does.
I love how they get so attached to their characters. Like,
yeah,
so nice. So yeah. But I can imagine that being a strange phone call, because you'd be there like, what could they want? Like,
but I'm dead.
Yeah, like, what is it? Did I do a bad performance? Like, it's a bit late now. The film's already aired. Like, so then that brings us on to segment 4. So this is episodes 7 to 9. So obviously the final 3 episodes, and all of these episodes are set in present day. So the 2000s. I was like, how do I say this number?
2000.
I was like, 2000. That's not a thing. Let's just say present day in the 2000s. So the first episode, so episode 7, is called Breaking the Fourth Wall. So this one's really interesting because it's kind of like based off mockumentary style shows,
like
Modern Family, a bit of like The Office, Parks and Recreation. It's that kind of style.
I laughed so hard at this.
I know, because she basically, like, Wanda's talking at a camera, and that's obviously why it's breaking the fourth wall. Like, it's very, very clever.
And they all do it, and they all have interviews. Like, we get Agnes, we get Vision, we get everyone having like these interviews. It's so funny.
Vision's interviews. Anyway, we'll get into that. But yeah, it was a great episode, because again, it was a change. We were like, this is new.
Especially after the Halloween episode. The Halloween episode is so intense.
Yeah.
Especially at the end, you're like, what is happening? And then this episode comes, and it's really funny.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what's happening?
It's so funny and ironic. It's just, it just shows how versatile this show really is, but it works. So then the next episode, episode 8, is called Previously On. This one is absolutely phenomenal. And just to briefly summarize, it's called Previously On because you get to see into Wanda's past and all of the things that kind of triggered her grief.
And we're talking from like a child.
Yes, the stuff we all wanted to see, the stuff we were all wondering about in Age of Ultron and Infinity War. So you get a lot of questions answered in that one. And then, of course, with a very original name, episode 9, the series finale. I mean, what else would they have called it?
It's also the finale of the actual.
I know, it's very ironic. It's very good. They're just too clever. So obviously, as we've just said, this is the final episode, and it kind of wraps everything up. Does it answer all your questions? No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, but we finally start getting some answers.
Yes.
I think at this point.
We get the kind of big answers that we needed in order for it to actually work to close as a series, I think.
Yeah, especially once you hit once you start to hit 7 and 8, I think things people start to meet each other again. So that's at the point like when Monica comes back in and meets with Wanda.
Yeah.
Wanda was starting to face up to the reality of what's happening because Vision still hasn't come home. So
Yeah.
Wanda's on her own with the kids until Agnes comes in. So we do start to get some answers. Like you say, not every answer, because if we had every answer, we wouldn't need any more Marvel.
Exactly.
But we do get some answers, and the episodes revisit Wanda's past and determine her future in the MCU as well. So there's a lot that happens in these three episodes.
So much stuff.
Like you say, more traditional Marvel, we kind of get the Wanda that we're used to
Yeah.
as well in this one now. So yeah, it's hard to pinpoint what the standout moments are for this because there's so many. But what were some standout moments for you across the three? And what were you thinking when you were watching this? Where did you think it was going to go? Because obviously we get quite a big reveal at the end of episode 7. And we still had 2 episodes left. So what were you thinking?
Right, so starting with episode 7 then. So firstly, like, I loved the whole mockumentary Modern Family style. I thought that was amazing, and it was so funny. I think this episode, I mean, Elizabeth shines in every episode she's in, but this episode really showed how versatile of an actor she was, because she nailed like that whole kind of vibe where she was just done, like she was done with life. She was like, I'm just gonna live my life for me now. Like,
it's the scene where she goes, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
And it's when like there's a scene where she's in bed and the boys come up and they're like, Mom.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
And she's like, Mommy's not getting up today. Like, she's just like, I'm not...
It's when she goes, Mommy's resting her eyes.
Yeah, and she's just under the duvet the whole time. Like, and it's so funny because then when she like dramatically decides to get up, she like just dramatically like chucks the duvet off her. And she's wearing some like weird outfit as well. Like,
well, it's the Halloween costume.
Oh
the night
yeah,
before,
of course,
isn't it?
of course. So then that's quite funny.
It's like hangover vibes.
Yeah. But it's funny because we haven't seen Wanda like this yet. We haven't seen her. Because she's obviously trying to act chill, like she's trying to act like nothing bothers her, nothing's going on. She doesn't care that Vision's lost, like she doesn't care, like
because the kids are like, "Where's my dad?" And she's like, "Don't know."
Yeah, she's like,
he didn't want to come home, so suit
himself. Exactly, and that's so funny because it's like they've had like a domestic, like an argument or something.
And it's funny because she's put all this effort into bringing him back,
yeah,
and now he's gone, and she's like, eh.
And then she like sits on the sofa with like some crisps, and it's just incredible. Like, it's so clever.
And that's the episode as well, isn't it, where things start changing as well, and she can't
yes
stop it.
In the house, like things start to change, like the structure starts to change of the house, like the decor in the house changes, and she's like, what is going on? Because like she starts to like pour some cereal and some milk into the cereal, but that changes, and
because it's like almond milk, isn't it, for like 2000, and then it's like a glass jar of milk. It's so funny.
So clever, so clever. But yeah, things change quite a lot, and she's kind of like, what is going on? Like, what is happening here?
But again, she's not really bothered.
No, she's like, oh, okay, like, cool, and just gets on with her day as if nothing's going on. But the boys are like clearly so concerned for their mum. But that, of course, crucially, is where Agnes at this point.
Spoilers.
Just can't help myself. That's where Agnes comes along, conveniently, so Wanda can have a day to herself.
She's like, sure, I'll look after the kids, hon.
And then
I bet you will.
The kids. So then she takes the kids back to her house, and this is the first time we see inside of Agnes's house.
Yes, because we keep hearing about her husband Ralph and the house, but we never see inside.
We've never seen inside the house, so that was interesting. And then obviously, like, we see inside, and she's sat on the sofa with the boys.
And Signor.
Oh, Signor Scratchy. Yeah, the rabbit.
The rabbit.
Which we saw in the magic show previously in episode 2. So this is important because it's the first time we see him inside Agnes's house. And it's interesting that she's decided to take them into her house. And they are basically like, oh, I'm so worried. Like, they're worried about Wanda. They're worried about their mom. Because they're like, is she okay? Is she going to be okay? And like Agnes is like, she'll be fine. Like, she's like, your mom just needs a break. Like, she says that sort of thing.
I love how we get all like the side glances from Agnes as well. It's like, the woman's not fine.
Yeah, yes, because that's the thing. We're still in that mockumentary style episode.
Yeah.
So we still get her like saying her like side bits, and it's so funny. It works so well and it flows so well. So I think you could get that so wrong, but they nailed it. And so it kind of gets to a point where, is it Billy or Tommy? One of them is like, because at this point we know that one of them can read minds. Like, we know that they have the powers to do that. And basically, like, I don't know which one it is, but
I'm
one
just
of
checking.
them, one of them.
So Billy is the one who has Wanda's powers.
Okay, so it's Billy then. So Billy is he can't read Agnes, I believe. I think that's right. I think that's why this kind of...
he's like, you're so quiet.
Yeah, and that is when, which is what we think she's been trying to find out this whole time, that is when Agnes realizes that the boys have powers. Because then she's like, So, yeah, so that is when things start to go a bit dark. And you're kind of like, what is happening here? Because...
the house is also really creepy.
It is. Like, it has definite vibes about it.
Yeah.
It really does have definite vibes. So then we kind of pan away from Agnes's house after that.
Because we get more of Wanda, don't we? We get Monica, because Monica's trying to get back into the hex, isn't she?
And then conveniently, Agnes appears. This is near the end of the episode, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because remember, like, Monica is... that's when we found out that Monica has powers
as well. Oh my gosh, so many things
happen. And she, like, becomes who we assume is going to be Photon.
Yeah.
Because she's been back and forth through that hex so many times, it's affected her cells, very scientific.
It's so cool.
And then she kind of appears, and Wanda tries to, like, blast her.
Yeah.
And we find out that Monica has really cool powers. And she can, like, jump and thud, and it's amazing. So Monica's trying to get through to Wanda to basically let her know that Vision's in danger from Sword.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, it's that moment where she's like, don't let him make you the villain. And she's like, what if I already am?
Oh, yeah.
And just as we're about to get a breakthrough, because Monica's, like, almost broken through to her, trying to get her to come back and help.
Yeah.
Who busts in?
Well,
Agnes. And she like pulls Wanda away and like takes Wanda back to her house.
But was not what it was before, because
it was Agatha all along.
Yes, because you go in the house and, well, the boys aren't there. So Wanda's like, where are my kids? Where are the boys?
It's a fair question.
And well, this is probably one of the biggest reveals, if not the biggest reveal of the whole series, because we kind of go down to Agnes's basement.
She's so casual, isn't she? She's like,
casual.
they're probably just like chilling in the
basement.
basement.
She's like, they're fine. Like, and then she takes Wanda down to her basement.
Well, because Wanda just walks in, like, Agnes doesn't even come with her.
So she just explores.
A normal basement.
Yeah.
And it's suddenly like stone and ivy, and she's like,
and there's like signs of like the devil around, like there's a lot of witchy vibes going on.
Children.
Yes, very importantly. So then, yeah, you're right, because then Agnes appears like suddenly,
as if by magic.
And this is where Wanda finds out who Agnes really is. And as we've said plenty of times, she was Agatha all along. Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, it was a big moment.
It really was.
It's not even like it's done accidentally. So you'd assume if she was going to be found out, it would be an accident. But she willingly reveals herself to Wanda.
Yes.
And then we get a fantastic song.
Oh my gosh, I listen to this still every day.
Get like it's only like a 30-second
clip,
isn't it?
Yeah, maximum a minute long. Like,
amazing song. But what we see is that it's called Agatha All Along. And it's so good. But what we see is that all the moments right the way throughout the series where Agatha was pulling the strings.
Yeah.
So like we see that it was Agatha who was like messing up the talent show to try and reveal Wanda's powers. We see that it's Agatha who brought Pietro back and is controlling Pietro. And then we discover what, Rosie, about Sparky?
Well, she killed Sparky too.
And that's where that episode leaves us, isn't it? Because Agatha goes, Agatha Harkness, nice to finally meet you, my dear.
Yeah.
And that's how it leaves it, and we're like, and it's sorry.
Like, yeah, we're like, sorry, what's just happened?
We're like, where are the children?
Exactly, that's the main question that stems from that.
Vision, we forgot as well, because by this point as well, Vision and Darcy are in a nice cream truck. Yeah,
which is amazing, hilarious.
And Darcy basically like explains to Vision where he's come from and the fact that he's dead. And what's lovely, I love in this episode, is that Darcy explains it, and rather than being angry, Vision is just really upset about Wanda
Yeah.
and how much Wanda's gone through.
Mhm.
And there's that moment. I mean, it's funny as well because he's sat there and he's like, I can't remember what it is specifically, but that he says, but he's kind of sat there like, just so nonchalant, like, and like, what am I supposed to do?
It's like I just found out I was dead, like, and all this kind of stuff. But he's so chill about it.
So funny, and there's a bit as well where he's like, she doesn't even seem to care that I'm not home.
Oh yeah, love that. I love
that. So we see that, but then we see a lovely moment where Vision's like, I just want to get back to my wife. That's all I want to do. So when it ends, we don't know where Vision is.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Wanda's trapped, and we don't know where the kids are. And then it does that stupid "please stand by."
Oh my god!
And we have to wait another week.
Oh, also we kind of didn't mention that when Wanda's in this basement, Agatha's lair, let's call it, that is when she does, because Wanda tries to use her magic against her, and basically it doesn't work because Agatha has used runes.
This is the start of the next episode.
Yeah.
Then, isn't it?
Is it the start? I forgot whether it was at the end of this one or the start of the next one.
I think that bit initially is when Wanda comes in and is like, "What is happening?" And then it's
the song.
I think so.
Okay, so then it must open in the next episode like this, because I thought it opened when they were outside, but that's the finale. So you're right.
Yeah.
So then we find out that Agatha is a witch. Because
so we flash back to Salem.
Yes, one of our favourite places.
I think we all thought those Simon sisters were about to make an appearance.
We did.
Got a bit excited. I was like, Agatha's Winifred. Alas, she wasn't. That would be such a good canon, though.
I know.
Anyway, maybe one day. And we basically find out that Agatha was a Salem witch.
Yeah.
Back in like 1500s, I think.
Yeah.
And she steals magic. She stole magic from her coven, killed her mum, and then put another coven. And now she's here in Westview, and we're like, what?
Yeah, it's all very like, what is happening? But then we realise that what she's actually looking to find out is how Wanda created this hex.
She's jealous, basically, of the amount of power that Wanda has.
Because she kind of knows, like, a bit of a spoiler, but she kind of knows that obviously Wanda's got like witchy kind of powers. Obviously, Scarlet Witch. So
well, because it's magic, isn't it? It's not like a technological thing.
No.
She has these powers
that
are like magic.
Yeah. So she wants to know, and like you say, she's jealous of the fact that Wanda managed to execute this hex and basically create her own.
Yeah, because she can't understand, can she? Because Agatha, as far as she's concerned, is the strongest witch on Earth.
Yeah.
So she doesn't understand how someone could do this.
Yeah.
Because as far as she's concerned, that's what she would do.
Exactly. Then this is where I think this is my favourite part of the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where Agatha basically forces Wanda to go back through her past and go through every moment that brought her to this feeling, all these emotions, her grief, which is just brutal.
It is, especially because she's like, no. And that's what you said about the runes as well, isn't it? Where she teaches Wanda that if you cast runes in a circle and trap a witch in it, only the witch that casts the runes can use their magic.
Exactly.
So Wanda can't use her magic. She says, no, I'm not going to go through that door. And then you start to hear her kids screaming. So she's also being manipulated by thinking that her children are going to be hurt as well. So it's the whole thing is very emotionally charged.
Yeah.
And it gets instantly dark, which is such a contrast, because obviously the episode before is so funny.
Yeah.
It's a very stark contrast in terms of the themes, because you don't get any humour in this episode.
No.
I mean, you get Agatha's one-liners, which are funny.
Yeah.
But it's not a comical episode.
No, it's a very like serious vibe. It's a very like educational episode because you're finding out things about her past.
Yeah.
So there's just so much that happens in all of these episodes. So, which I think is why this is going to work better as like a discussion, because there's just so many things. So the first past like time that she has to revisit is her childhood, which I think everyone wanted to see this because we were all so intrigued to see her parents, and to see her and Pietro as children and what that was like. And obviously we know that was through the war. When they were children, there was the war in Sokovia. And it basically like sets the scene where they're in the house with their parents. Her dad's just come home from work, I think.
Yeah.
And they're about to kind of settle down and watch a sitcom.
Family movie night.
Yes, well, it's family movie night, and it was Wanda's choice. and she picks the Dick Van Dyke sitcom show, which then everyone's like, that's why she's chosen a sitcom to be her medium of her reality that she's created. So that one is really interesting because we find that out, but then we also find out what really happened with the Stark Industries bomb.
Well, yeah, because what we don't realise is what we're watching is the night that her parents died.
Exactly.
And so we're watching them enjoy the Dick Van Dyke show, and then all of a sudden, it's exploded.
Yeah. And in Age of Ultron, we're told that basically they just wait it out, and they're laying there thinking like this bomb's going to go off at any minute. They kind of have to just wait it out, and it just miraculously doesn't go off. That's what we're told in Ultron. But then
they think it's like a defective one.
Yeah, exactly. But they were like terrified like that it was going to go off, and they already knew that their parents had died as well. Yeah. But what we actually see is Wanda uses her powers to affect the bomb and basically free them from this situation.
Because we don't really see it, do we? What we see is we see Agatha basically say to Wanda, like, is it probability hex?
Yeah, probability hex, yeah.
Look at me.
Yes.
I listened to the quiz on the Sunday. And Wanda's like, I didn't do anything. Like, what? We literally just lay and waited. So even at that point, see, when I first watched that, I didn't think that was real. I thought Agatha was trying to look too deeply into, like, the reasons. Obviously, as far as we're aware, the only powers that Wanda has have come from the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
So when I was watching that, I thought it was just Agatha like trying too hard to find answers. Because all we see is Pietro and like young Pietro and young Wanda lying under the bed in fear. But Agatha tells us that actually Wanda was using subconscious magic.
Yeah, which is so interesting because then that's like interesting. So she didn't just get her powers from Loki's scepter, because that's then the next thing we visit in her past.
Yeah,
is when her and Pietro have volunteered to be part of Hydra. I was like, there's so many. I was like, it's not Sword, it's not Shield. And essentially, like, there's an experiment in which there's Loki's scepter.
Yeah.
And they try and get people to go in and see like if anyone can touch it, like how they react to it, what happens when someone touches it. Like they just want to kind of observe and see what happens. And that is where she gets her powers from the reality stone. the mind stone. Yeah, thank you. I was like, I'm sure it is, but I don't know.
It's one of them.
Too many stones. So that's where she gets her powers, her extra powers, from that stone. So we kind of see like how she becomes who she is, and it's obviously all very traumatic because she's not really living like a normal life. Like she's volunteered as part of an experiment. They both have, Pietro has as well. So it's kind of building up to show us that she never really lived a normal life, and it was all quite like strange and not exactly the happiest life for anyone.
So we see her in her cell, because remember, we see that moment, don't we? And what we see, which I missed when I first watched it, I blinked. So we see Wanda kind of like touching the scepter, kind of comes towards it, don't we? And then we see some kind of vision, not the Vision.
Oh yes,
a vision.
That's it. Yeah.
And it's like a big yellow glow, and we see a silhouette of someone who looks kind of like Wanda in a really cool costume.
Yeah.
And then we flash back to her in her cell. Again, watching sitcoms on rerun. And Hydra can't understand because the camera's cut out. So on their cameras, all they see is Wanda reaching out and then Wanda on the floor.
Yeah.
They don't see anything that we see.
Yeah.
And then we get a really awkward few moments where we just watch Wanda watching the TV, and it's very strange. It's like she's just not there.
It's just really unsettling to watch, I think.
Yeah. Because I was kind of waiting for something to happen, like for her to manipulate something, and she just sits there and watches.
Yeah.
And I think that proves to us those sitcoms were her escape.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And then we move into the Avengers compound, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, in her bedroom. Because that's where we've seen it in Civil War. So Wanda's in her bedroom, and Vision just kind of walks through the walls like to come and speak to her. Just so cute. And obviously, like, he can tell she's really upset because this is after her brother Pietro has just died.
And we get a lot of an insight, I think, in that section into, like, because I think the problem when you get with the other films, they're great, but they're very, like, stop and start.
Yeah.
Like, this happens and this happens.
Yeah.
And she talks about the fact that technically she's an illegal immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have any status. She doesn't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't got a job. She hasn't got any family. She doesn't know anyone there. It's a different language, a different culture, and she's literally been thrown into this place where she can't leave.
Yeah.
So you suddenly start to see that even though, like, she's alive, she's not happy, and she's not particularly safe either. She doesn't feel very safe.
Yeah.
And she's miserable again.
Yeah, exactly, which is a recurring theme. And then this is where, like, Vision, he's so, like, sympathetic, but he is obviously an android. So it's so interesting because he's showing, like, empathy and sympathy to Wanda. And it's probably the closest thing that Wanda's had to a proper friend.
Yeah.
To speak to about these things. And there's just this one line that Vision says, because they're talking about, obviously, her grieving about Pietro.
Yeah, because isn't he, like, he's like, obviously, I don't know, because I've never lost
Yes, yeah, and he's like, I don't know how this feels either. And he's like, but what is grief if not love persevering? And that just stuck with me.
Yeah, I think it stuck with everyone who watched that.
So
it's
beautiful.
Such a beautiful insight and a way to explain grief, because that's so true. It is, isn't it?
And coming from someone who isn't a human as well, I think that also makes it even more, like, prevalent. It's just, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot going on in all of these episodes.
There's so much.
We literally talk about this forever. Like, there's
Honestly.
too much.
Because then from there we then jump on to see, then we see, like, the sword, don't we? We see the sword headquarters.
Yes.
So this is after Infinity War, after Endgame. So when, obviously, because Wanda disappeared in the blip. So when she's come back and she basically marches up to sword headquarters and she's like, listen, I want to see my boyfriend. Like, I want to say goodbye, and he needs a funeral. And they're like, no, he's ours now because he's a machine and he's a weapon. But she's like, so she basically, this is where we start to see an echo of the earlier episodes. In the earlier episodes, we saw an image that showed Wanda storm in and take Vision. Yeah,
using her powers to, like, stop people from doing anything.
What we see in this is that she actually had authorization to go in.
Yeah.
She just opened the door with her powers.
Yeah.
And then she sees Vision in pieces on the table, and it's really hard, I think, to watch that scene because director Hayward is in it, and he's talking about Vision as a weapon, as a machine, and he can't understand that that's who she was in love with. And she says that as well, doesn't she? And it's really disturbing because you see it's literally Vision's body in pieces, and I think that for me was when I kind of was hit by how weird their relationship was as well.
Yeah.
I was like, he really is a robot. Like,
imagine,
really
like, seeing your dead boyfriend in parts. I just no.
But importantly, we see she basically breaks the glass so that she can go down and see him. And obviously the Mind Stone is gone. It's just his head, basically. And she have that really heartbreaking moment where she tries to feel for the Mind Stone, feel for him. And if we remember back to Infinity War, he's like, what do you feel when you feel the Mind Stone? And she's like, I just feel you. What do we get in this one? She gets, I can't feel you anymore.
Yeah.
And then she just walks out downtrodden, basically, and leaves him there.
Yeah.
Because she knows that basically that those pieces are no longer Vision. So what we see is that she doesn't steal Vision's body. So then we're all like, well, who's the Vision in the Hex then? Because we were all under the impression that she'd stolen Vision's body and kind of magicked it back to life.
Yeah.
And was dancing around with his corpse. But clearly that isn't true. So then she kind of drives. Then she gets in a car, doesn't she? And I love that she has a red car.
I know, it's so appropriate.
And then she gets back to, like, she gets in the car and drives. And we see her drive to Westview and we're all like, ooh, what's happening?
Like, why is she here?
Arrives at an empty plot and this is like the moment we're all waiting for.
Oh my god.
She gets out the car and she has like this deed and there's a plot and there's a heart and it says, is it somewhere to grow old in?
Yeah, like a place to grow old in.
-V.
Oh.
And so Vision has basically, like, bought them this plot of land to make their life on, and he's dead. Wanda's got no friends. She's alone. Everyone she loves is dead.
It's
like,
so
Captain
tragic.
America's gone as well.
Yeah.
Like, Iron Man, who was funding her, is gone.
Yeah.
Like, Hawkeye has gone back to his family. So she literally has nobody. So it's fair to say she has a breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that breakdown unleashes the Hex. So this is when we finally get the answer that actually she did cause the Hex, but it wasn't intentional.
No, she didn't. She never had the intention of doing this. She was just having a breakdown, and it was a result of it.
that scene from her is incredible. This whole episode
Insane.
from her is incredible.
Incredible.
And what we see then is that she actually, she has no control over her powers, is also interesting.
Yeah.
We think by this point she controls them. She doesn't.
No.
And we see the pure expansion of her powers we've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Because we physically see like her powers come out of her and make Vision. So that when we finally know that Vision has no real material attached to him, he is all made from Wanda.
Yeah. So we know he's not the Vision we know.
Yeah. That was really shocking, I think, to look and think, actually, this Vision doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, that was, no one thought that. Everyone assumed it was the dead body. So that was really hard to watch. And then it kind of, the camera turns around and we're in that 50s episode right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Where it's black and white again. And that's where it ends, isn't it? Because then we have, like, Agnes basically is like, well, Agatha by this point.
Yes.
It's like, wow. And then we're all sat there. I was an emotional wreck.
Oh my god, yeah. Cried so much.
Been through so much. But then we still had questions.
Yeah, it didn't answer everything. It answered a lot about Wanda's past. It answered how the Hex came to be. But there was still so many questions.
And then it ends, and like all of a sudden Wanda thinks, right, it's fine, I've shown her what I need, because the whole way through Agatha's trying to figure out what's happening, how the magic happens.
Yeah.
At this point she knows.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden Wanda's back outside and she can hear her children, and we see Agatha in the sky, full on witch mode.
Amazing.
With both kids like trapped with magic, and then it just cuts out, because then she's like, this is chaos magic, Wanda.
Yes.
And she's basically, the first time we ever hear the Scarlet Witch in the MCU, we get, you're the Scarlet Witch.
And then that's bang, then it's a series finale, like leads on to the next episode.
And I guess if we just summarise as a series finale, I guess, because I actually think that episode 8 has more in it than
Me too.
episode 9.
Same.
I think episode 8 felt more like a climax. Episode 9 was just kind of like wrapping it up and giving us the things that we wanted to see. But I feel like episode 8 was the one with the answers, the one with the most dramatic revelations.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's why lots of people weren't necessarily happy with the series finale, because they felt like they were waiting for more. But how could you take any more after episode 8?
I mean, exactly. And I think the issue with the series finale was always going to be, because this was released week by week, people were building up theories of what was going to happen.
People were still waiting for this Mephisto
man. And I think some people have just got it in their head that, well, one of the main issues was that Paul Bettany had announced there was going to be a big cameo.
Oh, that was so funny.
Little did we know that the cameo was the White Vision.
Yeah, because we were
himself.
Waiting, you told me about this, and I was fingers crossed for a Hawkeye.
Yeah, well, so he was like, I meant for it to be a joke, but I realised it went really out of proportion.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and I was like, I'm really mad at you right now, because he was like, yeah, it's just a joke, because I was the cameo, and that's why I was saying it was such a great cameo that I'd always wanted to work with. And I was like, that's great, but I was expecting a big cameo. So like, I think the problem was theories and like what was being said online. It got everyone to the point where they were like, this must be happening, like Mephisto must be coming into the episode, we're going to get a huge
cameo. Because there was Mephisto, there was Nightmare, there was
X-Men stuff as well.
People kept going on about an engineer, and I was like, read far too much. They were waiting for like, the X-Men engineer to come in. Yeah. I was like, all she said was that she knew someone who could help. That's all Monica.
And then automatically people were like, oh, it's going to be John Krasinski, because he was in the X-Men. They were like, it must be him. So like, I think everyone kind of went into the finale with really unrealistic expectations.
Everybody wanted everything at once. That was the problem. What we actually got in the finale was a very emotional stuff. We had basically Wanda eventually lets people of Westview go.
Yeah.
But then she realizes that she can't keep her children and Vision and also let everyone go, because they're attached to the place. So we see a really hard moment where Wanda basically has to decide whether she's a villain or not. Yeah. Which was very emotional. Like you say, White Vision appears, because we get that at the end of episode. Because end of episode 7, we start to get end credit series.
Yeah.
Credit scenes.
Yeah.
Which we haven't had before in this, which was weird. When we first started, everyone was waiting for end credit scenes, and we didn't get any. So yeah, White Vision is still a up in the air, part of the pun. Question, because he kind of comes, other Vision explains basically who he is quite quickly. Yeah. He remembers, so current Vision passes his memories on and then disappears. So that's one of the big questions I think leaving now, is because I was expecting White Vision to kind of come in at the end. I just was.
I was as well.
Introduced.
Yeah.
And then he buggers off and we don't see him at all.
Yeah.
Which is good, because it's like leaves things like
Yeah, it leaves things open, which is what Marvel like to do, and it keeps us interested in the storyline.
And then there was a point, wasn't there, where I thought that Wanda was going to have no powers left. Because
yes, because of the battle with Agatha in the sky.
Agatha steals magics. Every time Wanda used her magic, Agatha was stealing it. And then I was thinking, maybe that's how this ends. Maybe it ends with all of her magic being stolen, and that's why she ends up going to Doctor Strange.
Yes,
kind of
I was thinking the same thing. It was very worrying to see her magic being taken away, because it was so distressing. But alas, Wanda took note.
She did.
She used.
The good student.
She was, and she used those runes. So she was the only witch that could use her magic in the... What even is it called? Like the air... I guess the hex still.
Yeah, because the boundaries are falling apart, but they're still there, aren't they?
Which shocked Agatha. Rightly so, because it also shocked me. I was like, oh.
The sword are here by this point as well.
Yeah.
So sword are here firing, and then the bullets are going straight through Monica. That's happening on the ground where the kids are also fighting the military. I love that line when Wanda's like, boys, handle the military, and then she flies off to fight the witch.
Amazing.
Incredibles vibes were definitely in that.
Definitely. And also there's a scene where Darcy's finally arrived in the ice cream truck.
Yeah, she's been stuck at the crossroads for a whole episode.
And she knocks Hayward down, and I think that's like one of the best moments. It's our only
Especially
moment.
with the noise, as well. It's just so good.
That added a bit of comedy.
I read as well that they, because I know both me and Rosie said after the episode, the finale, it's great because we finally see Wanda become the Scarlet Witch. We see the classic costume, but modernised. Like we see her power unleashed. Lets everyone go. Sadly, we then have these really emotional moments where we have to basically watch the kids and Vision disappear.
Yeah.
There's loads that happens. But me and Rosie were saying when we watched it, and our friend Danielle as well, that we wanted more of Monica, Jimmy and Darcy, because you don't get to see a lot of other people. But I read that apparently there were supposed to be more episodes.
Yes, I read this too.
That there were additional scenes for these guys, but they were cut out because of time restrictions.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting, because I think it was supposed to be, was it 10 or 13 episodes, something like that?
Yeah, I think 10. I think it was. I think there was supposed to be one more episode, basically.
Yeah. Which is where we would have got more. Do you know what? I wish, to be fair, there maybe had been one more.
Me
I do
too.
kind of wish that, because I feel like for a lot of those characters, we didn't kind of get a tie up.
Yeah, and particularly as they described it, that scene would have been in Agatha's lair basement, and it was going to be with Senor Scratchy, whatever his name is, the rabbit. So it's going to be them investigating. So that would have been, I imagine, really good, because they're such a good trio.
It would have been great to have seen sword and stuff all over her house and whatever. Yeah, because that was how far people were going to go. Do you remember there was that episode where there was a fly, and people were like, "That's Mephisto."
Oh my god, yeah.
The fly, and then Senor Scratchy ate the fly, and everyone was like, "Oh."
Yeah, literally, people were clutching at straws. They were literally this means this, and it's
And sadly, I think that is just again a reflection that people struggle to have a superhero story led by two women. That was just the way it was.
They wanted more from men.
Which we've had enough men. Not to be rude, but we've had enough men in the Marvel universe. They've had their time. Yes, we could have more, of course, but the last two phases have been dominated by men. So it's about time. We haven't ever had a female villain ever.
No,
we've had obviously Ant-Man had that girl, but she wasn't really a villain.
Oh yeah, no, she was kind of a victim in the end. Yeah,
we never had a proper female villain, so it was about time we had one. And it did annoy me, because I remember I said to you when we discovered it was Agatha, and I was like, I hope they keep it as just her.
Yeah,
because I really wanted to see a female villain. Yeah.
Because without a male villain who is leading her or is on top of because that's how it's always been in these sort of things. So it was nice that they defied stereotypes, and we got more of Agatha, and she was the main one, which was.
And I think once you accept that the series finale was emotional rather than more there was action, but once you accepted it was more about an acceptance and a moving on of grief, I think you enjoy it more, because I think there's an element of anticlimax to it, because episode 8 is so intense and we get so many different pieces of knowledge.
Yeah.
It is a bit, and because you kind of know that like the Scarlet Witch reveal is coming.
Yeah.
You kind of have gathered. But it's once you accept that it's emotional and it's about Wanda, it's a lot more impressive, I think, rather than expecting everything to happen. I think it should have been 2 hours.
Yeah, I think we needed something longer.
They tried to push it all in too quickly. The fact that you kind of had like the Visions conversation at one point, and then you had like Hayward, and then you also had like the townspeople, and then you had like trying to understand what chaos magic is. There was so much happening that I think 2 hours would have been a lot better.
Yeah, I agree.
To kind of track the story from all elements, because we didn't again, the kids were underused as well.
Yeah.
We barely saw Monica. Like there was just
definitely
so much happening.
Yeah, because I remember when it ended, I was like, no, this is fake news. I was like, that can't be the end, because I was like, we're not done. So I was like, there must be end credit scenes, because I was like, we're not done. Obviously there were two, but like still, I was like, it felt like it just came to such an abrupt end, and I wasn't ready for it to end like that. So that just to me showed that we needed a bit more, because it just I needed something else. But it basically sets up quite nicely for the rest of the MCU. So obviously we have Monica will be in Captain Marvel 2. We're assuming that Darcy will be in Love and Thunder, and we're assuming that Jimmy will be in Ant-Man Quantumania. And obviously it's confirmed that Wanda will be in Doctor Strange 2. So obviously the final credit scene is the one where she's kind of using her, you get like Thanos vibes, where she's like on this like cottage in the middle of nowhere, and again by this point we're like, where is the other Vision? Is he here yet? No. And we realise that Wanda has mastered her astral self already, and is using the Book of the Damned. And again, and then that we hear like her kids screaming as well. So the question we're then all kind of left with is Wanda a villain still? Is she, I mean, was she ever, but or is that's where she's heading? Is she becoming consumed by her powers? Because obviously Agatha mentions that the Scarlet Witch is basically meant to destroy the world. Her destiny.
So we're all a bit like, oh, what's happening there? Or is she just learning to control her powers? We don't know, but she looks very chill. She looks more calm than she's ever looked. So it leads quite nice, I think, into the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the question is, like, is she trying to bring back her children? Like, is she going to try and bring back Vision? Because, like, that's what the questions from hearing the children's voices. It's like, what is she actually trying to achieve? So I think that was a great way to end it. Like, I liked that ending in the end credits. I just wish there was more to the actual, like, story in the finale, but that doesn't mean it was a bad finale, because it wasn't. It was still
I also would have really liked her to have had the chance to sit down and chat to Vision, because we never actually had that, especially because Vision has all these like realizations with Darcy in the ice cream van, and Wanda still doesn't get to talk about it. She gets to relive it with Agatha, but she doesn't actually get to sit down and talk about how she feels. And I think I would have liked to have seen that really her to kind of talk through, like, I just wanted this, I kind of meant this to happen, blah blah blah. So I wish that was my one complaint about the whole thing, really, is that we could have had longer episodes, because I think there was so much in this world to explore, and they clearly had more content to make
easily.
I wish it was just a bit longer.
Especially
because Disney Plus do the annoying thing where they say it's 40 minutes, but actually it's 20 with 20 minutes credits. It makes me so angry.
The credits. I remember watching the first episode.
And it was finished.
I was like, we've only watched like 15 minutes. I was like, where's the rest of it? And then the second was the same, and you're like, sorry.
I was so angry, because I discovered this when we watched High School Musical series for the first time.
Never forget that.
Because that was like the first series that I'd watched on Disney Plus, and I was like, it's fine, we've still got 10 minutes left. And then it turned itself off and went into the credits. And I was like, sorry.
And then you have to wait a whole week.
It's ridiculous.
For like another 10 minutes.
Episodes are 20 minutes long.
Yeah. Because it takes a while to get things going. So, like, that's when you're kind of at the point where you're like, yes. And then it stops. And it's like, please stand by.
And the problem is that The Mandalorian was so successful with its, like, weekly releases. That now they're going to do that for everything. So thanks, Mandalorian fans.
But the irony is, The Mandalorian would have worked better if it wasn't week by week. But I think WandaVision, I liked the week by week. I liked that. I just wish they were longer episodes, because I like the suspense that was building every week, and I like that we could kind of theorize. You didn't really get that with Mandalorian. Like, it was quite a concrete story. So
and it gave them more room to create more conversation around it. Right? So someone could have sat and binged it. It was not, you don't get the same conversation online as you would with the weeks. So. Yeah.
Yes. So Well,
I think we've covered quite a lot of ground.
yes, I agree.
Hopefully, if you didn't understand the plot before, you understand it now.
Yes.
It's definitely, it's very unique. It's the only type of TV series of its kind, really.
It really is, yeah.
Very experimental, and a really great setup, because it sets up so many different stories ready to go. And we get the official introduction of magic, because obviously, like, the last kind of phases have been dominated by technology, really. You get, like, the vibranium stuff, you've got, like, the Iron Man stuff, you've got all that types of stuff, and how cool everyone's gadgets are. It feels like this is a bit of a different
It's like
level.
a new era of Marvel.
Because obviously you've got between Monica's powers and then Scarlet Witch's powers, and we know that we're going to go back to Captain Marvel and we'll go into Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
It feels like we're coming back in, like, we're moving away from technology and we're moving more into, like, magic and mystical stuff.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure how I feel about in the sense of a story, because I tend to find when you move more to magic and mysterious stuff, it can get quite complicated and dense. So I hope they don't make it too complicated and isolate audiences who aren't massive comic book fans.
No, I think they'll hopefully, in the way that they always do, manage to like blend it nicely with the other kind of normal Marvel like kind of fight scenes or like things like that.
Because not to be controversial, but I'm not interested in a multiverse, to be honest. I think that for me just sounds like too much hassle to try and keep up with. Especially if you're someone who's not like the Doctor Strange end of Doctor Strange really freaked me out when you had that massive face. Like, I think it's a very particular taste of film, and to understand it is quite deep.
I think
so. I hope they have a balance.
Marvel's complicated enough as it is, as you've probably realised if you don't know anything about Marvel and you've made it this far.
Well done.
So complicated, it really is. Like, no one truly understands. Like, we're really big fans, but like we can't recite everything. Even like our friend Danielle, like she's kind of like the most knowledgeable out of the three of us about Marvel. She still doesn't know everything because it's impossible. Which is why we love it so much, because
because every time you go back you find something new or something you've forgotten about.
So
if you had to rate the series out of 10, what would you give it, and tell us why?
I'm really regretting asking us putting this in now.
It was your idea.
I know, I'm so sorry for this, but I'm just going to go with what my gut is saying. I'm going to give it a 9.5 because I would give it a 10, but I would have liked some episodes to be longer, and I don't know. I think the finale wasn't bad, but I did get the vibe at the end where I was like, is that it? Like, I was like, are we done? Because I was disappointed when it ended, in the sense that I wanted more. So that knocks off a 0.5, I think, but it's so hard because it's like one of my favourite series I've ever watched. So I feel like I should give it a 10, but I'm going to go 9.5. Just purely because it was incredible, but it did have bits that I would improve.
I feel like my gut at the beginning was an 8. I don't even know why I was like 8, but now I've actually thought about it, I'm like, that makes sense, because the only problem I have with it is the timing issues, really, and the fact that it should have been longer. And I agree with the finale. I think it was great. I really enjoyed it. The problem was because they peaked in episode 8.
They did.
The so you got all the reveals that you really needed in episode 8. Episode 9 was more like a bonus episode. And it, like I said, it was more emotional, which is I once I kind of accepted that, I was like, I'll love it. But kind of watching it in the moment, I was like, it's over. Like, what? So I think I'd probably get like a 9, just because I feel like I loved it. Like you said, like I would watch it over and over again. I was so excited for every week. But I think that the timing element of it, and the fact that there are some things that were left untold, like what happened to the man in the bumblebee suit, like we don't know, like the fact that and like the fact that Pietro turned out to be Ralph Boner. Like, it was funny, but I was also like, but why did you waste, it's not really bad, but why waste screen time on that when it didn't actually impact the story? Which confused me a little bit. But again, maybe it's through deleted scenes, maybe that'll come back
exactly
later on.
We don't know, but again, that comes back to it potentially being rushed and we needed more. So
I think it all does come down to that. I think an extra episode or like an extra hour would have made a massive difference.
I agree.
Not that I needed it, but I would have quite liked it.
Because you're so invested. You just want to know.
And even things like the fact that, like, they obviously portrayed Hayward as wanting to have this white vision and kind of dominate things, and we never really got a closure to that either. Like,
it's very open at the end.
Which is fine, because we might get answers in the next installment, whatever that might be, because things keep changing in their orders. but yeah, that was my thing, and like I say, I think there are a few things that I've mentioned. I'm trying to remember now, like what there were things where I was like, that doesn't quite make sense, or like that's what was it I was saying before? There was something where I was like, in this episode this annoyed me. I can't remember. It must have been very, very small. So yeah, 9 from me, I think. Just from like because the time element, every week I was like, oh, like I've just got into it. Because from a viewing experience, you just get back into the show, and it would be like, that's it.
And then it's like, please stand by, and you're like, for goodness sake.
For goodness sake.
I can't stand by. Like, play now. So yeah.
So that wraps that up then. So thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed them, please subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or whatever you're listening on, and follow us on Podbean if you listen to us there. If you've been listening for a while, again, we really appreciate a review. We haven't seen any new reviews in a while, and we know there's loads of you listening. We can see the number of reviews matching the number of listeners. So it would be really, really great to maybe have like a few more reviews before the next episode.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, so that we know what you fancy. Let us know in the reviews what you want to hear, because obviously we do a bit of everything, but let us know what you're enjoying, which episodes are your favourite, and we can make sure that we're focusing on those in the future. Also, if you have any Disney friends that you haven't passed us on to yet, please do. We'd love to share the Disney love with even more people, especially in pandemic times when we all need a bit of magic. And if you still can't get enough and you haven't done so already, you can catch us as guests over on Making the Magic podcast, and I was also a guest on the Three Musketeers podcast talking about working at Disney as well.
Yes, there's so much content of us.
There's just so much of us. You can never get enough
No,
of us.
You can't get rid of us, I think. And of course, don't forget to follow along with our Instagram for all of our latest magical adventures and throwbacks. And as I said earlier at the beginning of the episode, our merch. You can find out more about our merch.
More photographs coming out of merch on there soon. So we've done our initial release, but keep an eye, because we kind of gave friends a VIP release, didn't we? So we just to get feedback. So there's definitely some photographs coming soon, so you can see what's up for grabs.
Yes, so that's exciting. So do have a browse if you feel so inclined. And we're currently offering ad slots in our podcast, as you may have heard in episode, I've already forgot which one 15. That was. 15. Well done. And you can find out all the information about those over on Instagram as well, and Facebook. So if you're a small business, please get in touch. We would absolutely love to give you an ad slot. It was so much fun doing that last time. It was really nice to help a small business. So,
and to learn, because we've even found a small business that we follow now and we keep up to date with, which is great.
Exactly. So yes, please do get in touch. And coming up next time, we'll be discussing the latest Disney animation film, Raya and the Last Dragon, which was released.
That's going to be an interesting one, I think. I think we're going to have fun.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. And that was released on Disney Plus on the same day, actually, as the WandaVision finale.
That was an intense Friday.
It was.
So at the moment, Raya and the Last Dragon is only available on Disney Plus with Premier Access. We knew we were doing this episode, so we've both bought Premier Access. So what we'll say is, obviously, we'll repeat this again in the next episode, but if you haven't watched it and don't want spoilers, and you want to wait till it's free, again, might want to just put a pin in that one.
Yeah.
And listen to one of our many other episodes again, why not?
Yeah, just go back through them all. And of course, in the meantime, feel free to contact us on our email if you've got any inquiries, or you want to inquire about the ad slots or anything like that. And our email address is sprinkleofdisneypodcast@gmail.com. And from the both of us, have a magical rest of your day.